agenda.
Got it. Thank you very much. Good morning, council. Good morning, Catherine and Helen and Andy. I think he was here, and staff members, thanks for coming. We've got someone in the audience. Hopefully there's some people watching. I particularly, and I think all of council, are very excited to begin our budget process in the tails of developing our strategic plan. It's a very exciting time in Oak Island. We've got some challenging decisions ahead. And Catherine, I pass this to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. We will move to our next slide and give you a more detailed agenda for the 4 hours that we're here today. This is the first of our many budget meetings in April. We've broken this month down in small bites for you so that you have different departments that will be coming before you and presenting their information and their budget requests to you as we go through this process. Today, we have the Pier Complex, thank you, with 801, and Gina is here for that. We will go through the golf course, the recreation department, your council budget, administration, and then ending with outside agencies and boards and committees. So from a funding perspective, that is what is on the agenda today. But since this is the first of our budget meetings, I want to take a moment to set the stage from the higher level story of our budget for this year. As you know, when we presented in January, we did a deeper dive into some of the economic indicators, the CPI index, looking at outside environmental impacts towards the budget. We also looked at our growth numbers. We've looked at the preliminary scroll numbers from Brunswick County in terms of our ad valorem tax rate. We're watching our sales tax. All of those components we've been monitoring very heavily from January until now, culminating into today's discussions. So for the budget process itself, knowing where we are from the economic impacts around us, we prepared the budget process with our departments with these guiding assumptions. All the requests from the departments were not restricted. They requested their needs. They too understood where we were from the environmental financial situation that we're in, but they provided your recommendations that you'll see in front of you today. However, we did require that they pay close attention to alignment with our new strategic plan, and we're able to fund or not fund according to the strategic plan. Number 3, we do currently, and what's before you for the rest of this month, have included no decrease in our service levels to the citizens. You will not see significant cuts or decreases in what services we provide. There's also no significant operating cost reductions presented to you in this budget. We did assume a 1.5% growth rate on our ad valorem taxes. We are hopeful that we achieve a 1.5. We are working closely with Matt and the housing start numbers, and we are down from last year as well. That is consistent with some of the assumptions from the Census Bureau as well as Brunswick County. But again, we will continue to monitor that. I think we'll have another preliminary scroll number from the county and continue to evaluate that number, because that is the large basis for our budget. In this budget, because of the 1.5 growth rate assumption, there is no major new capital included. There is some, and we tried to make sure that we achieved replacements as needed, but there are some that will be deferred or delayed, but no essential significant new capital items. very minimal departments as well as outside agency funding recommended. And a merit for employees is included at a 3% level. It's included in the numbers currently that you will see this month.
3% merit plus the cost of living?
Right now, it's just a 3% total.
Is that all the way across the board, every employee? Or is that a sliding scale?
That is every single employee. That's what we've done in the past, is 3% average for all employees, full-time, not part-time.
So the very best employee we have, whoever that is, gets a 3% merit raise.
That would be the highest merit.
The weakest employee we have, no matter whoever that is, gets a 3% raise.
No, that would be anywhere from 0 to
That's what I'm
1%,
Okay.
2%,
Okay.
up to 3%.
Okay.
The cost of living, which they've done in the past, was a flat guaranteed no matter what your performance level was. So that's not included this year. This is meritoriously based,
Topped at 3%.
correct. It also does include some reductions for employees. I want to be very upfront about that. We have had lots and lots of discussions about a policy that's been here that's called a 5% probation for reclasses, promotions. There was an additional 5% after 6 months for completing a probationary period. That has financially, critically impacted your salaries, which is your biggest cost factor in the budget. So we have eliminated that policy, and we will continue to have that out of the numbers that you see now. It is not included in there. There is also a life insurance policy that we're looking at reductions in, because we are already participants in it's a minimal, but it's a life insurance policy for the state. One of the other things they do here is an additional life insurance for employees. It's not excessive, but it's on the table this year for your consideration. I know this is very important to everyone. How much would we need to pull from reserves to balance? You'll recall last year was a $3 million usage of reserves for one-time capital use. In your budget before you currently, it's between $500,000 and $600,000 only. Because, number 11, what you need your reserves for this year is to transfer to the Beach Nourishment Fund. Of course, we all are hopeful that the bids will go well and we will be placing sand by next winter. So that would be in addition to the money that has been building in that fund and the room occupancy tax. That will probably be the difference that is necessary from the general fund balance.
The current fund has the 20 million from the state, and what from us?
It has some amount that's been going in there from the room occupancy taxes in the last couple of years.
10 or 12 million?
Less than that, that's correct. So we're anticipating at least a $5 million addition to go in there. It could be more depending on the bids. We're estimating the 31.5 number, which is the same number that we've been using for this particular sand project, because we're using the 6.6 million on the east end to buy the cheaper sand. And as you saw Tuesday night, we're getting an additional amount of sand at very low cost on the west end.
Has USACE opened their bids yet? Yes?
For the east end, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are those,
It came in at a level that our cost, instead of the estimated 6 million, they're asking for 6.6 million. So it was an additional 600,000. So it did come in higher.
were these bids, I'm just trying to get a sense of the market. So did they improve by rebidding? Did they get a lower number? I'm just trying to estimate what ours might be.
They did in terms of
Dredging costs?
Corps of Engineers was not even able to award last time because it was so excessive. So they are able to award. So in that regard, it did come down, not significant.
Okay.
Not to the point that we feel better about our numbers, if that's where you're
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
heading. I asked that same question.
Bill, to your point, I think if we go back to 2022 and the financing model that we worked on and that David Hatton gave his blessing to, we actually had in that model a $6 to $7 million transfer from reserve. So only a $5 million transfer is actually a more positive point of view. I don't want people here or the public to think that our accommodation tax is suffering or didn't generate what it was supposed to. It actually, this tells me the accommodation tax generated more than we had projected in 2022. So we're actually $1 million plus ahead of the game, and we're transferring less funds from the fund balance to cover that gap. But that was in our original plan in 2022. We had built in there a transfer. So I see this as good news.
Absolutely.
This tells me,
No, I
this-
followed it, yeah.
this tells me that tourism remains strong, at least through, this current fiscal year. We'll see what this upcoming fiscal year brings us. But even last year, right, we had periods of bad weather. I think bad weather hit every single major holiday weekend. So this is actually good news for the transfer to cover the beach nourishment project. I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands
That's
that.
great perspective, and you're absolutely right. Those numbers have remained strong. I think that it had anticipated a transfer over a couple of years, and that the transfer actually didn't occur yet, so it's all going to occur this year. But yeah, that's just a timing thing. Okay, so I got to get to number 12. The best news is what you have before you and what you will see throughout April is being able to do all of this with no tax increase. As you'll go through it, there have been some cuts or deferments on capital items that were requested by some of the departments to achieve that. But this is our starting point. You have a balanced budget with no tax increase before you, with all of these other assumptions put in place. Having said that, that is not true with user fees. We will be recommending some user fee increases, but no tax increases built in.
Before we get off this point, number 12, no tax increase. Does that mean no tax increase in our thought process on April 10th? But once we start going through all of this, then the
That is
tax
correct.
increase becomes a reality.
Then you will have those options. The 6 positions from the fire department that you will hear about, he will express that need. That's not included in here. So if a tax increase is necessary for that particular item, you'll have that option to change that. The same with the rec center. Any additional steps forward on the rec center, that's not included in here.
So as a point of clarification, I know what you intend, Bill, but for the sake of the public and to save something blowing up, can we talk about tax rate and not taxes as a dollar sum? Because we know that these things fluctuate. So we're responsible for the tax rate for sure, which is at 16 cents. But to say taxes are going to go up or go down, as you know, property values with the past assessment drive that. So I just want us to be clear about what it is we're talking about.
Before we leave the page, I'm sorry, are you,
Yeah, that's okay.
the elimination of the COLA, is that from your perspective as the manager, a permanent, long-term decision, or is it simply reflected to get this budget to zero tax?
So I think for a current year with the 2% CPI, it's not as necessary. It has been very important to employees in the past when inflation was extremely high. And if that were the case, I would be recommending a COLA. So no, it's not an opposition entirely. I think that's a necessary tool for recruitment and retaining strong employees when the economic climate indicates so. I don't think that's the case this year, and I think the town has been extremely fortunate through these last several years of high inflation, and you all have graciously accommodated that for employees to have a 3% merit as well as a 3% COLA in addition to the 5% So it is not a long-term strategy that I would recommend. It's a,
I hear you saying it's situational and contingent on the economic environment. That's the short answer, that's all I want. I would ask, though, and have asked in the past, and I'll ask again, now that we have new management, I really think the employee evaluation system needs to be reconsidered, especially with respect to merit awards. And I'm familiar with those systems, worked in them for many years, and I dare say, the last time I asked for data, the proportion of people getting the maximum merit raise was astounding. I mean, we'd have to be a Navy SEAL organization to hit that level. So down the road, not for this year because you've already structured it and reduced employee benefits on the other side of it, but down the road, I think that needs to be examined, re-examined, and I think council needs to be part of that re-examination when management comes back with a, here's the analysis, here's how it worked, here's what we recommend in terms of improvement. That gives us greater efficiency, greater cost effectiveness, a whole lot of things occur from that, so.
I completely agree with you. There's a lot of work to do in that area, in this organization, and HR and I have been talking through the work plan for HR for this coming year, and that's a component of it where we can really dig into the merit system. At 3%, it's difficult for differentiation to the degree that you and I are accustomed to. 5% is usually more typical to have a bell curve, to have your, in addition to a basic bars ranking system. A lot of those other strategies we've not even attempted here.
That's work for another year, but I'll be
We'll get to
watching
it.
from the sidelines to see what.
I couldn't agree with you more philosophically.
I think the other challenge is, and I don't dispute anything that you said, John, but we have to measure it against the sensitivity of our ability to recruit people to even apply for jobs, right? It's been no secret for many years now that when we have a job posting, it can be a challenging, depending on which job it is, to find candidates to even apply, or those that apply are qualified for the position. So while I understand that maybe the merit scale has leaned a little heavy toward a larger population of staff, the staff that we do have, it's important to try to retain them because it is difficult to recruit and onboard people for job openings that we have, not just in public safety, but I think across the board in some areas, it can be a challenge. And I'm sure the town manager would agree that sometimes, we look within for promotion, but then it's difficult to backfill that role. And then sometimes when we create a new role, it's difficult to get qualified candidates to apply. So it's a balancing act.
Well, yeah, I don't disagree with your statement either, but here's what I would say, this is really, I think, simply a strategic choice. The other way to address that problem is change your salary scale so you're truly competitive and you attract people at the front end. And make sure that the steps in your salary guide, right, reflect retention strategy. And what all that means is, and I can give you a simple answer, more money is going to go into personnel, right? So that's the other way to do it, as opposed to giving everybody a 3% merit raise and saying they're all meritorious.
Right.
I'm more comfortable with the front end, like we pay a competitive wage, perhaps more than competitive, because we're a unique community and want the best people, and we have a strategy to retain them. We keep paying them. I mean, that's the cleaner way to do it from my point of view, but either way.
And I think you're exactly right. We have employed some of those strategies already current year. I think that's where the 5% probationary strategy came from, was bring people in at the minimum of a sometimes behind scale and bring them in at the minimum and then give them a 5% bump up after 6 months. The better tool is to be able to recruit what you need to recruit. If you have a superstar that walks in, you don't want to risk offering them the bare minimum and hope they make it for 6 months and give them a little raise. You lose out on people that way. So we've opened up that strategy so that we can recruit appropriately as needed based on their their merit
I
conditions.
mean, when you think about it, not to belabor this point, well, I'm going to say 70% of our net cost is employee salaries. Employees are the most important element in the organization. So if we're talking about improving the employee performance and over the long term attracting people who have talent, then we need to think about the contribution we're making there. That's my point. That's all.
Would agree.
However we do that, it doesn't matter as long as we get to the right set of numbers.
So do I understand, Catherine, this as presented is a balanced budget, and what the staff are coming to present is justification for what is on paper in front of us? Or are they asking, in some cases, more money than what is being proposed here?
Well, I certainly wanted you to see all of the requests. In our system, there's a requested column, and it stays frozen. The second column is administrative recommendations. So you will be able to have those discussions of where we have made some recommendations to decrease. Through budget meetings all the last month with all of the departments, they've all done a really good job, but you will be able to see both. Our current balancing is based on our column, so that does include some decreases from what the requests are today. But I have no restrictions on the departments. I want them to come and speak freely to you and share their requests and their needs to you.
Excellent, thank you.
Have we given thought, 180 town employees roughly?
165,
165,
not including part-times, yeah.
not including partners. Have we given thought to, not department heads, but somewhere along the way, independent contractors? To get away from salaries and workers' comp and...
That is a good strategy, and I would say in some areas we do use that. Often we get knocked for using so many outside vendors or consultants as if it's a bad strategy, but it's a good strategy because if
Most
you
corporations are going that way.
That's right. If you need these services occasionally, you don't bring in a person to do that full-time. So we use a lot of engineering services that way, architectural
But of the
assistance that
165
way.
employees, none of them at this time is being thought of as viable for a independent contractor as opposed to employee number 161?
That has not been presented. In fact, the only one that I think we have been discussing is the opposite of that, where it is currently done by contractors that we could perhaps do it cheaper ourselves in-house. So some of those are being looked at, but yes, that is a strategy that we could look at if we needed to down the road, but there are no reductions in employees in this budget.
But you have done some cross-training. So where our number of employees, except where we might consider contract work, there's the potential to cross-train and fill spots that maybe don't have the staff that they need. I know you've done some of that.
Yep. That's true.
Well, before we leave, this is really the philosophic part of the discussion, right? And in some ways, I think the most important part. So Bill raises an interesting point. From a cost-saving perspective, outsourcing makes a lot of sense. There is, of course, a significant downside. Quality control becomes more difficult, right? Yeah, can. Because if you work for me and you don't perform, I'm going to fire you, right? You can say the same with an outside contractor, but they don't necessarily have the same kind of commitment to your organization, having experienced this. So, yes, it's a strategy. I think we should keep that arrow in our quiver until we get to a point where we have to make reductions. We're not there yet, so.
So, and to formalize that, if we can get to that point, you actually have the ability to bid against yourself in an RFP. So as services come up and we are looking to RFP something for a private contractor, we can look in-house as well to see if we are cheaper doing it in-house, and vice versa. we'll take an effort to look at items that could be outsourced instead of, but we're not there at this point, I don't think. We're not in a cut reduction mode now, and we'll continue to monitor that, but hopefully this island is strong and beautiful and doing well, and if we have some additional growth and successful in some of the commercial, residential components that we've been talking about, we might be able to weather that storm without additional cuts, unless it's just efficiency, and that's what we would like to keep that strategy
For
for.
those departments that may be coming in to ask for additional staffing, maybe it's an opportunity for us to think about that shifting it to a contractor, potentially. You know, laser decided, right? Is it going to work for police? Probably not. Might have worked for stormwater, maybe.
Cutting grass.
Because once you hire somebody, it's baked in and you got it for life. So if there's an opportunity for flexibility using contractors, something for us to consider.
Good.
And before we go any further, thanks for all the information. Thanks for answering all of our questions and telling us everything. I just sat here a while ago thinking, poor Catherine, the town manager, we put her in the hot seat, and I didn't mean to do it that way.
Oh,
Yeah.
fine.
Thanks for answering all the questions.
You're welcome. This is actually my favorite time of year. I
Okay,
enjoy this
good.
part.
But
Thank
I
you.
didn't want you to feel attacked.
Not at all. I hope I answered them thoroughly.
Yeah.
We could switch our questions to Helen and put her.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't do that. I don't want to run her off.
New, Bob, she's new.
This is Helen's first year, but I will tell you, she is one of the fastest learners I've ever seen. She is doing very, very well, and she's detailed past me, which is great. She's doing just fine. We'll get her through this first year budget process, because local government, well, government in general budgeting is very different from where private sector is typically. So hopefully this is an enjoyable first experience for her as well. But yeah, we've been working hand in hand. She's doing great.
We will get other handouts, won't we? I don't see the line items, and this is what we paid in '21, and this is what we paid in '23.
So we've been discussing making these a more high-level budget discussions for you, so we are not going to walk you through line by line. However, yes, we will always give you every single line and every single dollar amount. But we have this year employed a higher-level strategy on the budget discussions. Who are we starting with, Pierre? I'll go ahead and get Gina to get ready to come up. And what we have asked each of the departments is to provide you with that conversation. Yes, you have the details in front of you. Yes, you will have your 5-year history and the trends, but they're going to focus on the PowerPoint presentations that we asked them to do. How are they aligned with the strategic plan? What are they doing? What are the changes that they're requesting? And you can hear it directly from them. So yes, you'll have both.
Catherine, thank you for your leadership there. In the past, I think we got way too far in the weeds, and what do we need for paper and pencils and things? It was like, nah, you handle that. So thank you for doing this.
You have it, so you can see it. It's fully transparent, but we don't want to waste your time today talking about that. We want you to have good, healthy conversations with each of the department directors.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Third pages. So we tried to make your notebooks so that you can follow along by day. So the first tab is everything for today, and it's based on that agenda that we had. So we're starting with the Pier Complex and 801, and we have Gina in front of us. And this is not in the general fund, just to remind you. This is what we call Fund 49. So any discussions on changes are around the revenues that are also associated with the Pier and 801, not the general fund revenues. Just want to make that clarification. And Gina has some great suggestions for you on just that topic of revenues. You want to start there?
Yes. First of all, I haven't met every one of you, so my name's Gina Sarjais. I've lived in this area for almost 4 years now. Just recently celebrated my 1 year with the town, so I'm very happy to be here. Looking forward to the years to come. So bear with me a little bit if something doesn't quite make sense because it's my first round through here, but I've got good support with Helen and Catherine, so I feel pretty confident. But again, thank you for letting me be here. We've got some really good ideas put together for the pier complex, focusing a lot on 801 and the changes that we can make there. There are some improvements we can make. Some things have maybe just kind of gone through the course of time, and that building, as we all know, gets a lot of wear and tear from the weather. And so there's some things that we are looking forward to changing and just increasing the aesthetics of the building. Some minor changes, some major changes. Of course, trying to be as cost effective as possible. So there's a lot of small things we can do that will make a big impact. So a lot of that is where some of these key points have come from. So with the goals we have, I just touched on number 2, but going back to number 1, we all know Catherine has implemented the customer service experience as a huge thing that all of us department directors and employees of the town are really trying to be better at. How can we be the best that we can be for not only our citizens, but for the visitors that come through here all the time? So playing with that, we really want to, for the pier staff and 801 as well, just really try to increase what how better we can be, right? How can we help our citizens? How can we answer questions for our visitors? We are really a key spot for people who are coming in and out of town. The pier is a hot commodity, right? We've seen it in the busy season. It's always packed. So my main goals for my staff is I just want to make sure that they are aware of what's not only going on the pier, but what's going on in the town. We've started some small things like simple as putting up flyers for what's going on at the rec center in the pier house, because families come in and they want to know, hey, it's raining, what can we do? Oh, well, the rec center's got XYZ going on. So something as small as that where we can send them over to another town facility is such a small, cost-effective thing that we've really seen some good feedback on that so far. And we really want to engage in our customers. I know it kind of sounds silly to say, oh, please leave us a review for the pier, but we do want to see the feedback. What are these citizens and the visitors wanting? You know, are they wanting something more on the pier? Are they seeing something that's kind of run down that maybe we aren't catching? So we want to get their feedback. We want them to have a good time and come back and visit us. And again, that all just ties into customer service and how we can be really good ambassadors for the town, because that's what we are. And then event center. So I touched on that first. We are going to make some changes. We've already made several changes within the building, just to try to clean some of the areas up, really make it look a little bit cleaner and nicer. Yes, we know that the building floods and that it gets beat up from the storm, but we do make money in that building, and we host a lot of weddings. We want it to look clean and neat and presentable. So that's kind of why I have on that first line there, is to modernize and enhance the aesthetics. A lot of that can be done, I guess, very cost effective. A coat of paint can do wonders, and that costs $50, you know? So there's a little things here and there that we're gonna work on, small things at a time. One thing we've already done so far is switched the office and the groom's room. I'm not sure if any of you have been back there recently, but we've rotated where those are at to make it a little bit more, I guess, appealing to the customer, as well as create some more privacy and security for our office. And then going into the pier shop, the main thing we want to do there is increase revenue. And a lot of that is going to come from increasing our merchandise options, just kind of expanding our product offerings. So, for example, this past winter, we had a lot of people asking about sweatshirts. We sell t-shirts and long sleeve shirts, but people kept asking for sweatshirts. So we ordered sweatshirts, and they've been flying off the shelf. So something as small as that, is something we want to continue to work on. What are our customers and our visitors wanting, and how can we expand on that? And then we just need to price those accordingly. So that's optimizing pricing, just seeing where we need improvements on increasing rates in the pier shop, and all of that. As of right now, I'm not asking for any pier price changes for walking or fishing or anything like that, but I'm talking mostly in the shop merchandise sales.
So,
You mentioned your bundled services. Have you, Jonathan, and the Part 3 committee, we've talked about bundling with the event center. Wedding parties, groomsmen, bridal shower, getting out on the, have you guys had an opportunity to talk about that?
We have not, but that's something that I thought about. In my past career, I worked in hotels, and we did a whole package with the golf courses as bundling, like, because a lot of the groomsmen like to go golfing. For example, this past weekend, that's what they did. They came, they set up the chairs on the beach, they went golfing and came back. So that's something where we can really work with them. So yeah, I'd be happy to have a conversation about that. I think that would be very beneficial, because there are other vendors and companies out here that will happily work with us, but of course, if we can cater that towards another town facility, that's the goal. So thank you for that.
I have a couple of
so
questions. You want me to
no, either way, go ahead.
wait?
She's got a couple more slides.
Oh, sorry, okay. go
Whatever
ahead.
you
Go
prefer.
ahead, and then let me, then I'll ask.
So one of the other things that we ask each department to address if they're directly aligned with a strategic plan, but also we've been working towards not just goals and objectives, but performance measures. So this is our first year going through this, and I apologize for the setup there. I didn't, yeah.
No concern.
We will make sure that is adjusted for your next meeting. I apologize, Mayor.
Or if you could send these to us, I'd appreciate it.
These are still draft. That's what this
Okay.
month is.
Draft.
So we're refining it every day. But each department went through and developed their goals and objectives as well as their metrics and key target measures. And this is something that we'll be starting to track from now on moving forward. The first round out, you'll see more workload measures perhaps, and not as sophisticated efficiency and effectiveness measures, but we're continuing to move in that direction. But really, really good start for performance metric tracking for this organization. And Gina especially did a wonderful job, so I'm glad you get to see hers up front, and I'll let her walk you through that.
Yeah. So as I mentioned on the last slide, customer service is a big key that we want to focus on. So the first two lines are going to be a customer satisfaction score. That's the easiest way to measure how we are doing. So the current measure, I've based that off of Google, Yelp, TripAdvisor, and Facebook. So took the average of those review scores, and for the pier, it's fantastic, 95.4. I think that's great, but I would like to be better. So I would like to have a 3% increase, and I think that can be very attainable. Again, just training the staff and adding more items, I think all of that can play into customer satisfaction. Same thing with 801, it is a little bit lower, and that is a part where I really want to significantly increase. So I've put in an 8% increase as a target for this year. And again, those scores are coming from Google, WeddingWire, and Facebook. WeddingWire is an online platform that we use to generate leads. Brides can get an app on their phone. They can message us back and forth. They can see star ratings, message other vendors. So that is a huge platform that we use. I get several inquiries a week, 6 to a dozen a week. So that's a big area that we need to focus on as well.
Do you send a follow-up questionnaire to wedding parties?
I do. So built into the platform for WeddingWire, there is a review request. So I can import their email or phone number, and it'll send them a message saying, hey, we hope you had a great time at your event. Please leave us a rating. And it takes less than 30 seconds. It's a easy click of a 1 to 5 star. They have an option to write in their own feedback in an empty box, or they can just do the star rating and click submit. So that's something that I send out for every event, and I actually send up to 3 of them periodically to try to get them to review it. So that's something that is growing, but it is just a little bit slower process. But we are now in wedding season again, so hopefully those reviews start to come up now that we have more events going on. The next line is average spend per visitor for the pier. So this goes back to increasing revenue and having our merchandise increased as well. I was surprised to see that our per visitor amount is actually 16.24. I thought that was pretty good. Those numbers are pulled from our Square platform, which is the point of sale system we use at the pier. And I would like to increase that. And the majority of that increase, I think, can come from not only slightly increasing some prices where I see fit in the pier shop, but adding in those extra merchandise items, those impulse buys, the things that they don't think that they need, but they see it and now they want it. A good example of that is stickers. People love those stickers that they can put on their car, their cooler. They cost me 40 cents and I sell them for $3.50. And they have no problem buying them. They're sit right on the register. So many people just pick one up and put it with their stuff. So something small like that can really add up throughout the year. So I do think that that number is attainable. And again, that's just, I think, a lot of impulse buys.
And that 1624 takes into consideration the guy like me that walks in and buys a $2 thing of water and walks out.
Sure does, yep. So that is the per visitor for every transaction. And it kind of makes sense. If someone's fishing, it's $10 to fish. So if we're getting somebody who's fishing for 10, they're most likely buying bait or ice or beer or something else. And we get families who come in and spend, everybody gets a t-shirt, everybody gets a hat. So it is higher than I initially thought, but then when I started thinking about it, that makes sense. So, but yeah, it's a good number.
That is a good number.
So the next line are year-over-year growth. So I pulled that number for current as a 4.4. So yes, it is much lower than what we were before, but you have to take into effect we have April, May, June, which are hopefully going to be very busy. So I averaged that out. As of that day, we need to make like $2,500 a day to get to where we were last year, and I think that's very attainable. We did have a very slow winter. It was cold, it was windy, there was hardly anybody out and around, especially on the pier trying to fish in January, February, March. So things are getting busier now, so I do hope that that can at least get us to where we were last year. But of course, I'm hoping for a 3% increase in sales. And that's just something I'll track on our point of sale system. And then last one, facility improvement completion. So that one is mostly 801, but there are some improvements we want to make at the pier house as well. But 801 has kind of the majority of the changes we'd like to make. So I say right now we're at about 25% completion. Hopefully by the end of next week, I can even bump that up a little bit more when they finish our drywall in our office. But that's just something I'll keep track of as we continue to move on for our changes. Okay.
With respect to improvements, I know you have, but talk about installing a kitchen. Is that something that would be revenue positive or not necessarily?
So I've thought about it. My background comes from full service, so on-site venue and restaurant space. However, I found that most of the caterers in the area, they know that they're cooking it there and bringing it to 801. And I have a list of caterers who are at the venue frequently, and they know exactly what to expect, what they can and cannot do. And no one's really made mention that, it would be nice to have an oven or something like that. We do have warming boxes, and they utilize those a lot. And I do ask their feedback because they're the ones who are here time and time again. I don't think it's anything that I'd want to implement soon, but maybe as we continue to make changes. I'm just not sure if it's quite necessary at the moment.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Last year, you asked for 20,000 in building repairs, but spent 544. And this year, 20,000, spent 608. But you have a big undertaking going on right now.
We
So
do.
that will gobble up close to the 20.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what that number's there for.
So thank you. You obviously have put a new face on this.
Yes.
And this question is not directed to you. This is directed to the manager. So I think I may be the only person here with the history. When we purchased 801, council made a very conscious decision that if we did not turn a profit within 4 to 5 years, we were going to sell it because we realized the limitations of the space, the flooding, the wear and tear, the absence of a kitchen, and seemingly no amount of weddings is going to turn a profit, net profit for the space. So we're still in that spot, right? Where we're continuing to improve, but not to the break-even point. The question is, do you see a break-even point, or are we going to break even on this?
So as it sits right now, this fund with Gina's new initiatives and some of the price increases that she is recommending, we would almost be at break even. We will have to take some money out of the fund balance in the 49 account to be able to balance for current year. So you're right, it's going to continue to be a struggle.
Let me recast my question. Is there a point in the future that you can see us getting to break even? 4 years out, 5 years out, with improvements, with physical improvements, with price structure increases? I mean, do we ever get there?
Last year, we were break even. So this year's close. So yes, we're right at that cups. You can sustain it for probably a couple more years. At some point when major additional renovations are necessary, you'll have very tough
That
decisions
was
to
my next
make.
question. When are the future renovations?
This
coming?
perhaps is one of those opportunities in the future to discuss, should the town be doing this? And if so, you're going to be putting a lot of money into to do it right, or do you not want to continue it?
For the record, I'm recording the history and the question that was asked then, and it sounds as if that question is going to be carried forward into the future. Council next can decide. Because the whole financial proposition in buying it, which we took a lot of criticism, rightly so, was that it was going to be a profit-making center. I don't see that, but I would hope it gets to break even. So, and I realize you have physical challenges with the plant that are difficult to overcome. They just are.
So I know that there were plans before me that were really quite exceptional in combining the pier itself and the 801 complex into one larger unit. I haven't done a deep dive into that, but I think that is a valid option to look at.
Yeah, we
It wouldn't
actually-
be 801, it would be in combination with the pier complex.
We actually had a business plan at one point, pre-pandemic.
Very good.
We actually put it out on RFP to bring in a corporate entity to run it. We didn't receive any bids or any interest, and the plan became obsolete with the pandemic, obviously. We were just trying to survive at that point. So we're in a new world now. But I bring up the history because I think at some point, council, probably councils next, several years down the road, are going to have to take a look at this and decide we're going to continue to invest, because my understanding is that plant's going to need major renovations in the future.
Yep.
There, I mean, that's, okay, I'm not an engineer, but I see major. It's not really wired for sound, and it doesn't have a kitchen. You're dealing with some major limitations right off the jump. Parking's not the greatest, and so on.
So if that is the direction of this council, we will put that on the work plan for this year to do that type of analysis, to be able to bring back a more concrete recommendation next
Before we
year.
get too deep into this, though, let me point out 2 or 3 thoughts, and correct me. I went to Beach Preservation's dinner. It was nice that Beach Preservation had access to that building. Bryce Taylor, the stormwater director, had lunches to show builders how to do stormwater, how to plant trees, and how to not get fined from his department. And he used the 801 Center. Do you put that in your bottom line on goodwill, or is that just, we let the town use the facility 15 times and I didn't charge any rent?
So that is a conversation Catherine and I have had. To answer that question, they have a very discounted rate or free. And that's something that I have proposed to change for because it still takes out my time and my staff. I'm setting it up,
Cleaning.
tearing it down, we're cleaning it. We're running a full-blown event, and just because it's not a wedding, but they're paying zero or hardly anything. And so that's something I actually have in my fee schedule, is to have something set, because there's also not a set up number of, okay, beach preservation pays this, Bryce Taylor pays this, or so-and-so pays this. It's kind of been all over the board, and that's something I found over the last year that I've been there. So we've had that conversation, and that's something that we need to look at, and it's a great point for us to make revenue on an event
Even if you
like
put it in
that.
a ledger with the parentheses beside it, could have generated $80,000. The mayor had a luncheon for other mayors, and it was nice that we had access to the 801 Center so she could invite other mayors to a nice facility owned by the town.
Which is wonderful, and we've been very benevolent to those type of organizations. But remember, every one of those takes away from a revenue opportunity. So we're cutting ourselves sometimes. I want to make sure Ms. Cartner gets a chance.
Thank you. So this ties into kind of along the lines of John's question. Last year, we had a fairly significant capital project at the pier complex to deal with repairs there. And last year, we talked about how much more money are we going to continue to put into the pier house before we reach, diminishing returns, no returns. So I just want to make sure that that's still on somebody's list. I don't know if it's on Andy's list, but at some point, we know in the future that we're probably talking about a major renovation, tear down, rebuild, whatever, of that pier complex structure. So I just want to make sure we're keeping an eye on that. I know we have fairly minimal repairs this year. I'm sure that's just maintenance and, regular upkeep. Second question I have is, and this would apply across the board to the town, we have $14,000 in credit card fees. I hate this, but people are going to it and you just deal with it. Does the town charge a 3% or whatever our cost is, a fee for people using credit cards?
We do not. So there's no extra fee that we charge the customer, but we do absorb the credit card fee. And you're right, everyone is moving more towards credit card
Yeah.
usage, especially at the pier. We see more tap to pay with their phones because they're on the beach. They're coming off the beach to buy snacks and drinks. They don't have their wallet with them, but they can tap to pay, but that's a credit card. And that's a huge increase.
Yeah, there's hardly a business on the island you can go to now that they don't charge you if you.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if that's something, at some point, we should look at across the board.
Thank you for that. I think the only two places left are golf and pier. So if you come downstairs and pay your utility bill, you do get the charge for the credit cards. So it's only the two merchant-related golf and pier.
I pay a
Correct me
$100
if I'm wrong.
bill. The pier complex makes $100. If I give a credit card, they make $97.
That's correct.
That's right.
The only other thing I want to offer up, and I sent you an email, and I know you haven't had time to even find it, and I'm happy to send it to you as well. This was a suggestion from a citizen. Carolina Beach does something called fish tiles. It's very similar to our Veterans Brick program, and Carolina Beach does it. You can Google Carolina Beach brick fish tiles. People pay to honor somebody or memorialize somebody with a fish tile that's a wooden tile. They put them on their boardwalks in Carolina Beach. Perhaps it's something we might could do on the pier, but just a suggestion that somebody passed along to me, and I thought it was at least worth looking into. They sell those things for like $250, and it can't be that much to make them. It's just a little cutout, a little wooden cutout, so.
Thank you.
So Gina, one last question, if I may. And I guess it's yes, no questions. Are we making money on the gift shop? Are we making money on the pier? Are we losing money on the 801 Center? Is that pretty much the story?
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Merchandise, yes.
Merchandise, yeah, that's where we're making the money.
Say that again?
The merchandise is where we're making the money in the pier shop.
Along those lines, and again, these questions are, they're all antecedent questions that before you got here, and I know you're doing a good job. So one of the limitations is we don't have a hotel on the island per se that's desirable. Are you working with the hotels? Are you trying to capture the pre-nuptial dinner? And there's a whole business there, and I know you have competitors, right? Because I see beach weddings, and they're not in 801, they're on the beach. Are you trying to build a consortium of people who serve 801?
Yes.
I figure you would.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I have a small group of vendors that I work with a lot already. Some of them were already working with 801 in the past, some of them are new. But to touch on the hotel, the Beach House Hotel, which is right there off of East Beach, they have finished all their renovations last year. It's really cute and well maintained. And a lot of our wedding groups will book a little hotel room block of 10 rooms or so with them. They have my business card, I have theirs. I went to their grand opening or soft opening last year when they finished their renovations. I actually know the sales manager over there. We used to work together in the past, so we kind of had a little conversation there about passing business back and forth. Now, of course, mostly my business is going to go to them. People aren't booking a hotel block and then saying, where can I get married? It's the opposite usually, but it's still good to have those connections. And it's in walking distance to 801, so that's huge. I planned on working a little bit closer with like Better Beach Rentals and some of the rental agencies as well, because there are I get a lot of inquiries. All right, we're going back and forth between, do we rent one of those big houses and have our wedding there, or do we rent your venue? Very different aspects for weddings. But that's something, if they're getting those questions, hey, why don't you check out 801? You could still rent a house. Maybe you don't rent the one that's, sleeps 30 people. You rent the one that sleeps 10, and then you have a wedding venue that does the setup and the tear down and all that for you.
Like you're all over the map on that.
Yep,
And I mean that in a good way.
Yep.
You're working to facilitate that
Yep.
synergy.
exactly. Yep. And I've used it to my advantage of, hey, I'm new. I just want to introduce myself and start a partnership. Because I've had some vendors come in even this past fall. Who were you? They didn't know that Lisa had retired and that there was a new person. And so I've kind of used that to my advantage of, hey, nice to meet you, and handshakes here and there go a long way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine, Helen, is it page 3? Where does it show what we spent, what our shortcoming is?
So I don't think you don't have the revenues in front of you, but the revenues are off about, do we have it on here? $80,000. So I said we'd need some. We've done no reductions to her request at all. But the additional revenue from her fee increases, those are included, but those are, be the first year of doing the higher rates, so we're a little conservative on the revenues, but as it stands right now, it's about $80,000
In the
gap.
past, it's been 200.
Correct. So here's a,
Yeah, that,
we have pie charts for you for each of these, maybe two
so
in the weeds.
80,000 sounds a whole lot better than 2 year ago talk.
Right, and they do have that available in the reserves. We certainly don't want to have to do that if we don't have to, but at least for the capital, she's requested 30,000 in each, I think, for Pier and 801, so the 60,000 in capital will definitely have to be covered by the fund balance.
Terry brought up the Pier Restaurant. Just out of curiosity, when does their lease run out, and when's the last time we adjusted the amount of rent they pay us?
For Coco, We're working on that right now. I think it's still in Lydia's hands at the moment. But yeah, that's in process. So by state law, there's a 10-year clause on that, and I think we're in, Lisa, help me out, 6? So legally, we have a few more years. I think this next lease, we're proposing a 2-year, and then we'll have to do something.
Yeah, because one of the questions which came up, I'm sorry to be the oldest person here with the history, that came up originally was, we set a rate that wasn't necessarily based on their revenue, right? And so my sense is we're really under on that lease, way under, right? Because having talked to several other restaurateurs, they're generating, $1 million, and I know we're not pegged to that number.
I think we have is it a 3% increase? I haven't looked at the lease in the last couple of weeks, but I think there's a 3% increase in there, but your point's well taken.
My suspicions, I suspect, are correct, that we're way, way under on that. Because it's been a huge success, and we put money into it, for Terry's point about the infrastructure. But is the lease really commensurate with what they're generating in terms of profit?
How are those lease numbers factored into the Pier Complex budget?
Great question. They are in the revenues.
Okay, great.
It's in the restaurant rental.
So in terms of being roughly 80,000 short of, these numbers are already.
Correct. All that revenue is already baked in there. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Pure restaurant rental is $77,000 a year.
So if you looked at those books, right, that's what I'm trying to tell you, you're not close.
Rent for 77, generate $1 million.
You're not close.
Well, many of us pay mortgages that aren't much less than that.
Can you go back to
I think
that
this is the gap you were looking
one
for.
last time? That last.
Yes, sir.
Admissions. What is admissions?
It's like the fishing.
Buying the
yeah,
license, paying $10 or $15 a day?
and season passes, and so it's all fishing, because we don't charge to walk, so it's just, it's under admissions because it gets you on the pier to fish.
Has real quick, and then we can move on, please. Has our parking situation for the season pass people worked itself out? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. We talk about parking more than we talk about fishing on that pier. Because it's confusing to people. Oh, I can park here for 2 hours for free. Okay, well, can I move my car over to a different spot and park another 2 hours? No. Or, okay, well, can I pay to park longer? Well, not in this lot. You got to move. So that's a daily
It's
conversation.
set up just so they can get their equipment out.
Yeah, and once you explain, yeah, you can, and it's also for the restaurant and the coffee shop, or if someone wants to go in and walk. That's why it's 2 hours free. And I mean, that's been a huge benefit. There's people who will come, they'll fish for an hour and they'll leave. So it's beneficial to the customer, that's for sure. It's just a conversation we have a lot.
Yeah. The pier itself is one of the attractions of Oak Island. I see families constantly walking down to the pier just to, instead of spending money at ice cream shop, they take the kids to walk on the pier.
Yeah, and they can buy ice cream from me,
And buy,
and
yeah.
it's cheaper.
So how are our rates, our fees, in comparison to other municipalities?
So I've looked into that. We're right in line with some of the other peers. Some, like in South Carolina, there may be $1 or $2 more for fishing, but some of those that are a little less, they also charge to walk. So it does kind of balance itself out. In comparison to Ocean Crest, for example, obviously that's our #1 competitor right here on the island. You know, they do charge to walk. And their fishing's about in line with ours. That's something, I'm not proposing any changes for the pier fee changes this year, but that's something we might want to look into next year. Like some of our season pass rates could go up. That's something I can see some improvements on. But we do get a lot of people who want to come fish at our pier because mom, dad, if the kid's fishing, they don't have to pay to go with them. So we do get a lot of families who say, oh, we're going to come here because we don't want to have to pay to just get on the pier.
So merchandise-wise, we're comparable with Ocean?
Yeah, I've kind of shopped around a little bit. Ocean Crest is kind of hard right now because they have the bar in there, so I can't really do a whole lot of alcohol comparisons. But for example, the alcohol sales, I just look at, all right, what's Food Lion and Publix doing? I need to make sure I'm there, if not slightly higher, because you're paying for the convenience of being right here on the pier. Plus, for beer and wine, you can't take your own out on the pier. You have to buy it from us. So if they want to drink something, they're going to pay for it. And then other merchandise, I've shopped around a little bit. I've gone in and out of some other shops, and we're right in line. We're not too far off. There's some things that I've already made some changes on. Our tackle prices were pretty low compared to others. I've already made those changes last year. But there's always room for improvements and changes.
Curious.
But yeah, we're pretty close to our competitors.
One last question, Gina. The advertising budget hasn't changed much at all the last 3 or 4 years. Is that not a concern? Are you all right?
I'm all right with it. A lot of that is coming from some of the print magazines that they always want us to throw an ad in here or there. I've noticed some where I'm like, I've never seen this magazine in my life. Why do you want $450 for me to put an ad this big in it? So that's something that I've kind of looked at of where can we advertise a little bit better on. It's kind of a work in progress still, but the other side of it is it might be more something where we advertise for 801 more than the pier, because people, for the most part, know that the pier exists. They might not know that 801 exists. I've had several people over the last year come in for like Beach Preservation Society. It's a good example. Oh, I've never been in here and I've lived here for 12 years. Well, let's change that, you know? At least know that it exists and you can talk about it. And so that's something I want to work on as we're making the changes. Some advertising and marketing initiatives I think can go a long way and help grow the revenues. I'm just kind of staying still with that number for now.
You're also pretty full at capacity.
Yeah.
In prime times for weddings. So
Yeah.
you can advertise, but we don't have
Not
any
much
more
downtime.
Yeah,
space.
yeah. I mean, because people were wanting to get married on Saturdays mostly. Well, there's only 3 Saturdays of the year. So, I mean, in our busy seasons, we'll have every Saturday booked and mostly every Friday and Sunday. It's harder to get the weekday weddings. But that is something that we do have in our fee structure of it's a little bit cheaper. So, and that's why Monday through Thursday is cheaper. Let's try to get them in the door. At least we'd be making some revenue. So yes, going into the fee structure. So the main thing that we changed for or proposing is the nonprofit group rate. So as I mentioned before, it was just a hodgepodge of who paid what, who paid nothing. And it's only it's a matter of time before one group talks to another. Oh, well, 801 charged me $20 an hour. Oh, they charged me full price. Oh, I got it for free. And I don't want any of that. I think it needs to be cleaned up. It needs to be written in our fee structure. I'm not sure how it had been able to be given out like that in the past. Because it was never in our fee structure. The only thing I added on what you see on the left-hand side is nonprofit group. The weekend hourly rates, weekday rates, those were already there. So I think that's just something I don't want to get involved in. Oh, well, it's not written in policy, so that's why this exists. So Catherine and I talked about it, giving nonprofit groups a 50% off rate. Again, yes, we are still there doing the work, but at least we're making some money around instead of it just being free. And then that is for weekday. So when it comes to the weekends, they're going to have to pay full price because, as Catherine mentioned earlier, if somebody books an event on a Saturday, and I give it to them for free, I could potentially be losing a wedding that's thousands of dollars. And I'm like, oh, shoot, it's not available because I'm giving it to the community. And I know it's a touchy subject because we do want to be nice to our community and our clubs and the people that live here and help us take care of the island. But at the same time, we are a business as well. So that's where that change is coming from.
Can you set up one club per month maximum or something like that?
Well, I don't know. I think where I'd like to see it is just kind of take it case by case too. Like, if I know it's a Saturday in January, we have nothing going on, right? But they're also not really doing events on a Saturday in January either. So I mostly just want to make sure we're not losing out on an opportunity to make, $5,000 on a Saturday when I give it to beach preservation for zero. So those will be some tough conversations I have moving forward with those folks, but that's just kind of how it goes.
As long as it's equitable.
And I think they can understand too. I mean, we're
We're a business.
a business and they want us to succeed as well. So I think it'll be good. I'll get a little bit of backlash on it, but that's okay. The other main thing to note on the fee changes is off-season and in-season. Prior to this, in-season was April through September. Our busiest month for weddings is October. So that made no sense to me, so I went ahead and proposed that in-season ends October 31st, because that way we're getting off our full price during our busiest month. So that is another change there, which then makes off-season November through March, which I think fits better anyway. Last October, it was busy. I'm not just talking 801, but the pier was busy. I feel like we had a nice warm October, so it makes sense. I know that may have been put in place to align with parking that ends in September, but that's just different than how 801 is going to be operating. And then a few little changes on the additional rental items, a few additions, things that we didn't have in the past written in there, some increases to the cleaning fees. We determined that we were actually losing money on the cleaning fees. So we charged every event a cleaning fee, and then we outsourced that, and the numbers weren't matching up. So those have been increased, so we're no longer losing money every time somebody comes to
That's
clean
your
the
people that do
building.
the cleaning.
It's
No,
contracted
contracted
out,
out.
yeah.
So the bill was the bill,
Yeah.
and we weren't covering
Yeah,
our
we
own
were,
bills.
we thought it was a
Bigger truck.
pass-through fee, but we were
Running
losing
it like a
money.
business now.
Yeah. And then just a couple little increases on there, nothing major, but that's where that fee structure sits as it is.
So you all will see this, as you recall, all fees go through you. We're trying to help people realize that golf, rec, pier, none of those fees are their authority or mine. This is the council's authority to set the fees, and I've been working hard to get the organization to make sure everything is in your fee schedule, and that will be adopted along with the budget.
So I just did some quick numbers up there about anticipated revenue increases. And again, we're not changing the hourly rate for events other than the nonprofit group. But one thing that we have done is the contract has been adjusted slightly. So in the past, people could rent 801 there was two items on the contract, a rental time and a guest time. Rental time is the timeline you're paying. Your guest time is the time your guests are there. Well, they were only paying for the time that their guests were there. So if you had a reception from 5 to 10 p.m., they were able to get in there at 8, 9 in the morning to start hair and makeup, do decorations, do all of that for free. And I talked with Catherine. I said, this is not sustainable because one, I'm going to be there. So if I'm going to be there at 8 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night, and they're only paying for 5 hours of that time frame, it just didn't quite make sense. So we've reworded the contract a little bit so it's rental time. So the moment I open that door to the moment I lock that door, they're paying for it. And that's how every other venue in the world does it.
They set up 2 hours in advance.
Exactly. So that first line you can see, I just based it off of weddings because it just makes the most sense. Not all groups are renting it for a long period of time. So your average, I did average hourly rate of 300 because some pay 400, some pay 200. So that kind of gives me a little average there. Average duration for a wedding in the past, 5 hours, 5 to 10 p.m. or 4 to 9, however that ends up being is a pretty common hourly rental time that people were paying, but they're there for much longer. So even now, if they just pay for an extra 4 hours, 3 hours for setup, 1 hour for cleanup, that's a pretty significant change in revenue.
And
For
that doesn't price you out of the,
Nope, it does not. So our number one competitor for 801 is going to be the Southport Community Building. They do a package rate, not per hour. They do a package rate of 12 hours for $4,000. So we're kind of right in line with what they do. And again, they're not on the ocean. They do have a beautiful venue and it's on the riverfront. But we hold the market. If you want to get married on the beach, 801 is your only option if you want an event space. So I don't want to drastically say, all right, we're going to double, triple our prices, but I think this makes sense where we can at least get money for what they're in the building.
that adjustment from 81,000 to 145, 64,000 sure is close to 80,000.
Sure is, yep. For something that we're already doing, you know? And that helps too, because it's justified. Hey, I'm renting this space from 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. There's no questions of, oh, when can I come in and decorate? Well, you rented from 10 to 10. I don't care what you do. Well, I care what you do in that time frame, but you can come in from that time to that time. So it includes your setup, your event duration, and your cleanup. And it just simplifies it. And I've booked a few weddings already so far with the new structure, and no one's questioned it. Because it's what they expect. If you're shopping around, that's what you're gonna see.
And so 9 hours is the average. If it was 10 hours, it'd be 10 hours times.
Correct, yep. Yep, I just kind of guessed 9 hours for an average time frame that people are currently there now. Yes, right now they'll pay for about 5 hours, but they're here earlier because that's how they were contracted
And
in the past.
if they think that they're go-getters, I want it from 5 to 10, I'll show up at 3 instead of showing up at 1.
Yep.
And we charge them for 7.
Exactly, and two, that affects the getting ready spaces. If they want to get ready at 9 a.m., they're gonna pay starting at 9 a.m. It kind of matches what everyone else is doing, and I really think that that's a huge benefit that we're gonna see an increase. Now, again, it is proposed to start this year, so it'll take a little bit of time because anybody that's booked in the prior contract, most of their weddings are, after July. So we're not gonna see it instantly, but we will see that increase, next year.
I really appreciate all the data analysis that has gone into your funding and that you're sharing. It's a very different presentation from in the past, and it's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Very thoughtful.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job.
Yes, thank you.
Was it fun?
Well done.
Absolutely. I
Okay.
kind of like numbers and spreadsheets.
Thank you. That was great.
It's it's just an adjustment, running it more like a business and scrutinizing the numbers like a business. And she's doing a great job. Okay. What is next on our agenda here? Let's move straight to golf. And I will say that we're going to do a switch on your agenda. And out of respect for Heather's time, I'd like to bring her next, and we move to the rec department instead of golf, if that's okay. Because the people representing the golf course is Scott, and he'll be here on another day with Public Works. We just wanted to spend some time with you on golf from a high level, the financial
Jonathan's not coming in?
discussion part.
Scott.
If Scott chooses to bring him on Public Works Day, I'm not sure. But make sure Heather can get back to her work
Page, Catherine.
quickly. It should be right behind
Way back
the
there.
49 fund, skip through the 38 fund, which is golf. The very next
Right after
page
page number 4.
is the first
part
page
is-
where it starts with the 10, which is our general fund. It says Parks and Rec on the top. And We'll create tabs for these for the next meeting for you, so it's cleaner and easier.
Or just a
All right.
total number at the bottom.
There is a total in funds and for each department. No, this didn't print a department total. Yeah. There is on page 5. You'll see this is the way Edmunds is. Sorry, we don't have anything to do with this, but it shows a control total, a department total, and a budget total, and another budget fund total. That's your total.
Thank you.
It's the same number.
And then there also is, so there's the 10-620 is Parks and Rec, and then the 10-621 is for the community center. Got it.
Perfect, thank you. So again, we'll start over with Heather's presentation. They have all done this similar type slides, the goals, objectives, strategic plan, and performance measures. I'll turn it over to Heather.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so our first goal would be to enhance the use of the nature and ocean education centers, and our objectives would be to increase visitation by 15%, and then secure a sustainable revenue stream. Obviously, we offer programs at the recreation center, so one way would be to start offering programs throughout the year, not just in the summer during at the nature and ocean education centers. The second goal will be to execute at least 12 events each year with resident satisfaction evaluated. So currently, we offer at least more than 12 events. And we think that we do a good job because the numbers keep getting bigger and people keep coming back, but we'd like to know what they actually think. And when we're doing these events, for the 12 special events, we'd like to have 70% cost recovery, and then an 80% satisfied of the evaluations completed. So it would be everybody's taking an evaluation, and there's the satisfied and kind of in the middle, right? And then below that, you have the stuff you don't want, and then you have the 2 above that. So we would want the in the middle and then the upper 2 for evaluations, but we're working through how to do that. I know there's going to be a QR code involved, and we'd also like to have some paper copies for people who just want to fill it out right there. And then the third goal would be to coordinate and implement the items from the new recreation master plan as funding allows. And then the objectives under that would be to upload items into Microsoft Tracking Planner to coordinate efforts, because the master plan is not going to just include the recreation department. It's going to also include Public Works and the Parks Department. So we'd like to have one place that all of the information is found. So to coordinate the efforts between Recreation, Public Works, and the Parks Department on completing the fiscally attainable recommendations for the master plan. And then as funding allows, implement 10% of the items for the new plan in the next fiscal year.
On the Ocean Ed Center, how does it doesn't generate revenue, does it?
Currently, it does not, no.
So that's one of the things we're looking at is there a revenue stream potential, maybe grant funding or otherwise, that we can start tapping into to enhance both of those centers.
No, it's a
They're
good
great.
amenity, because
Yeah,
people come here
that's right.
and they go there.
They're fabulous.
Right.
So I haven't seen any signage for the Ocean Ed Center. Usually there was the surfboard out front, and all of that is really looking,
So that goes up when it opens,
okay. All right, good, thanks.
Memorial Day.
Wayne stepped down from the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. Has he stepped down from Ocean Ed?
No, but the reason he stepped down from the advisory board is because he's gonna be traveling a lot. So he's not.
No, I knew that.
Oh, right, so he's not gonna be there on a set schedule like he has in the past, but when they are in town, he has already set up some volunteer times.
Oh, so he's,
Yes and no. When he's available, he'll hang out with us.
he's been good for it.
He's been amazing. Okay, so performance measures, so the increase,
Strategic plan.
oh, sorry.
So each of her goals, you'll notice that they are directly aligned with the strategic plan. I think hers was kind of nice and clear and easy because there were some very specific things in your townwide strategic plan that she
Yes.
tapped into.
Yes. Thank you. So the increase in the nature and ocean education attendees, under current measures, as you can see this summer, we had 1,723 at the Nature Center. So this year, we'd like to increase that by 259, which would be the 15%. And then at the Ocean Education Center this summer, we had 2,131. So again, we'd like to increase that by 320. And then the results to track through that, for me, were the same as the target measure. So instead of copying, it's the same thing. We were going to try to have that 259 and that 320. And then the next performance measure was 75% cost recovery for special events. Current cost recovery for special events is 50%. So we're going to increase that by 25% through more innovative marketing and sponsorship opportunities, as well as more spaces for food vendors and vendors. And then the next performance measure is 80% satisfaction rate on evaluations. We currently aren't collecting evaluations for programs or special events. And again, we'd like to have 80% at that they were satisfied, and then obviously happier than satisfied as well. So in those three ranges. And then the next performance measure would be as funding allows to implement those 10% of the master plan suggestions. Currently, we're not implementing any of the items that are in the current master plan. And then, again, that target would be to take 10% of his suggested items and figure out what's most fiscally attainable and go for those.
Okay, you have the same thing in front of you. You have her budget with the 5-year history, what was requested, and then the administration recommendation on it. And the only item that was adjusted in the Recreation Department budget is line item number, help me out, 10-620, 5420. She has requested a 14-passenger bus that has been recommended to be delayed. So I'm being completely transparent and making sure she has an opportunity, you have an opportunity to question each of the departments and understand it. And certainly that can be adjusted if you see fit.
What buses do you have now?
We have an 11-passenger bus, well, I'm sorry, that's the next budget. We have a 14-passenger bus in 620 that we use to transport campers. We were going to purchase another one this year because in the past, we've had 2 buses. We've taken 24 campers in the summer. Because we only had the one bus, we're taking 12 this summer. But the reason we were asking for another bus, also to be transparent, was because we've always had 2 buses, and that's just not a good reason to continue doing it. The cost recovery, as Catherine pointed out, it's just not there. So we're gonna put it on pause. We have the one bus that we already own. We're gonna take the 12 kids this summer, and we're gonna look at it moving forward for cost recovery.
What's the condition of the current van we have? I mean, is it a fairly late model? Is it in good condition? Does it break down all the time?
It does not break down all the time. It is a 2015. It has there are about 35,000 miles on it. We keep it well maintained. Cosmetically, there is a scratch on it that was pre-me. It's been there for a couple of years, but it runs great. It's very reliable. Oh, now that I've said that.
It can get by another year.
For sure.
35,000 miles new.
Okay.
Now, does the limitation on the 12-passenger, the 12 campers, limit our overall camp participation?
Yes, however, we don't have high number wait lists right now. So that's encouraging. I think we're meeting the need.
Meeting the need, yet not increasing capacity of campers.
Right.
Which,
We want to do a deeper dive into that because it's a very expensive program that we are subsidizing heavily.
The 12 and
And there are
24
good
campers, where do you transport them to?
So, right now, we are going to BCC once a week to go to the gym, because we don't have anything like that here currently. On another day, we go there for their pool. We go to the splash pad in Middleton Park one day. I just forgot the name of the park. Dutchman Creek Park, we go one day, and then they do a field trip one day to somewhere. The farthest that they go is Myrtle Beach. But there are different camp models, right? So if we had a different facility or more space in the facility that we had, a larger multi-purpose, if we had a gym, there are a lot more programming possibilities that we'd have without having to move the campers.
So that, to address that, so if by chance we were to get a new rec center in 3 years, we wouldn't need a second van 3 years from now.
No, and they do nature walks back behind the rec center. They do beach walks where they stay on the dry sand. We do not get near the ocean. But I mean, there are a lot of things that we do out of the rec center. So there's different models to explore as well. Not having a bus
Can
wouldn't
you from
prohibit
time
us.
to time borrow the community center's van?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Is it used year-round?
No, it's just, well, that's not entirely true. Jacob uses it for the excursions that we have and the walking club. However, that could very well be used, the community center bus could be used for that as well.
So that's 14 passenger bus is primary for 8 weeks of summer camp.
Right.
So, if I may, just looking at the big picture here, so full-time salaries are down, but part-time salaries are up. Am I reading that correctly?
You are, and a lot of that is my detailed, wonderful Helen going through and making sure people were charged to the appropriate
So
lines.
it's really not a net change, although
Correct.
on the last page, I'm looking at the administrative recommendation is considerably less than last year's appropriation. And what accounts for that?
I believe.
Right, so changes from last year, Helen just reminded me, one of the major drivers was that initial feasibility study for the rec center. Obviously, we don't need to do that again,
I mean, I'm looking at
but operating is similar.
$1,000,007 is now $1,000,003. So that's a considerable chunk of money that's no longer there.
And those were all one-time things in last year's budget or current year's budget.
So there were
Brought that.
$400,000 worth of one-time things?
Yeah, what else was in there?
So there was $100,000 for the bathroom renovation,
Okay.
which we obviously didn't do because it's still in the air. There was, I think, another $70,000 for the kitchen renovation for more office space, which again, we're just gonna kind of wait and see what
Trying to
happens.
understand why your budget went down.
For sure, for sure. And then we had added some additional into contracted services. Of course, I can't remember now why. There's about 200,000 in contracted services that we had pulled over from 2 years ago. I don't remember why.
Let me ask it another way, because I don't want, so is this just simply an accounting change, or was your budget cut? That's what I'm trying to get to here.
It was not cut. She didn't ask for the same, because those were one-time things, so they didn't need to be requested again. They were kitchen, bathroom renovations. They're in current year's
And
numbers.
I do
not
remember
next year.
another chunk of it was for fitness equipment. But when we purchase what's in this budget year, besides one piece of equipment, we will be all fully updated on our fitness equipment.
Thank you.
And the one piece that we're not replacing is, they're telling us it doesn't look nice, but it's in better condition than what we get new. So we don't want to spend that money if we don't have to. That is another big chunk of it as well.
Okay.
Good question.
It's a big delta, that's all.
For sure, for sure.
And to further understand what John was getting at, in '24, you were appropriated 1.3, and in '25, you're asking for 1.4. But but the recommendation is 1.3. So it's not really going, it's pretty much the same request as 24 was.
It was higher in fiscal year 24, 25 because of those one-time items.
Correct, correct. Okay.
Heather, have we looked at leasing equipment instead of purchasing equipment?
It's what I would suggest if we move forward with the other plan. It's a little difficult. You pay a better rate if you're leasing the entire gym. And the way that we've repurchased the equipment, it would be yes, by the time it would be worth it to start leasing, we would have had to replace equipment again. Do you know what I mean? But if there is a new facility and we're not wanting to bring current equipment into the new facility, between maintenance and purchasing new equipment in the budget year since I've been here, so 4 years, we've spent about $30,000, and a typical lease for the size gym that we have is about $20,000, and that includes maintenance. So it would definitely be more cost effective if we were doing the whole gym.
Right,
Does that make sense?
that makes a lot of
Okay.
sense, thank you.
Going through the request, Heather, summer concert series requesting 42,000, but I've always been with the understanding we receive all that from the sponsors.
We do. Well,
So it goes in,
50%.
sorry.
so 50% of that 42,000 comes from the sponsors.
Correct, that's in the revenue side.
And it goes in another slot. Yeah.
Show the full.
So really, you don't need 42,000 for the summer concert series, you need 21.
No, you still by law have to appropriate the full amount of expenditures.
Okay.
You just show the revenue coming in on the revenue side.
But when we're sitting here wondering how much money we're spending, we need to also know in the back of our mind, the summer concert series is going to get 50% of that money thrown into at the end of the day.
Right, and that's why her goal was 50% cost recovery, and she's hoping to increase a lot of those to 75% cost recovery. So we'll be tracking that better.
And the same with the Sunset on Summer Music Festival. That is pretty much covered by sponsors also.
Barely 50%.
This past year, the hope is next year to be 75%.
So is that not a metric we want to track?
She's got it on the measures.
Okay, thank you.
So what is the strategy to increase the recovery by 25%?
Increased sponsorship packages. So it's, the increased sponsorship packages and then increase the amount of vendors. Now that we're having a different layout and we're using the other field, we can accommodate more food vendors. And there were lines at all of them the last two events, so it's gone well, and that was double the amount of food trucks we've had previously.
So if you've noticed, if you were at any of them recently, we broadened the area. You can bring in more vendors. That creates the more revenue.
And the vendors themselves aren't even upset that more competition comes because they sell everything they bring.
And more people are starting to show up.
It's nice to have all the options,
Yeah.
not just a hot dog or not
dog
just
or
one thing.
catfish.
I'm not throwing off on hot dogs.
Have dinner
Yeah,
there.
Yeah.
just.
Yeah, and I bounce around. I just got barbecue last week. I'm gonna go get a hot dog this week. Yeah.
Or the same night.
Yeah, or the same night.
But for sponsorships, is it a tweak or is it a significant increase you're talking about?
So currently, all the sponsorships for all the events were the same. So
$900.
it's a summer concert series. Say this again?
$900 roughly.
Well, there's different levels. 1,500 was his most like the highest level, and that was summer concert series. So we're working on a plan for sponsorship packages for all of the events, but obviously Spring Fling, Mardi Gras, they would just be the lower tier sponsorship packages, but in the past, we haven't gotten sponsors for those events. So we're looking at more opportunities for sponsors and then also different levels as well.
Okay. We just, a suggestion, just be careful, right? Because if we price the sponsors out, we
Right.
lose them, it's kind of penny wise and pound foolish.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
5% increase or 7% increase might be palatable. A 20% increase may get people to walk away.
Yes, and It wouldn't be that much. And again, for the larger events, the summer concert series, that's gonna stay the same. Because we have the increased food vendor and a few other options for funding.
What are the food vendor fees? If I were a food vendor and I wanted to rent space, do you know?
It depends.
Can remember that off the
And
top of your head.
I don't remember that. It's in the fee schedule, and I can email it to you guys so that you'll have it. But if it's a 2-hour event, and it definitely goes by if it's a push cart, if it's a tent, the size of the food truck, it's laid out. I will email you guys that section of the fee schedule.
Is it online? Our fee
So the
schedule's
little,
online.
the little push cart that sells snow cones or whatever,
That's the-
they don't pay the same amount as the big hot dog trailer.
Not anymore.
That's smart.
So it's space dependent, real estate dependent.
Essentially, yes.
Do they pay to get a preferred spot, or is that kind of a first come, first serve? Or-
Ryan maps out the spaces, just depending on who needs, some people need electric, some people need gray water, so he puts that into consideration. And then obviously, if you have a hot dog vendor and then a vendor who includes hot dogs in their sales, he's not gonna put them together. So he does an
Now,
amazing
I mean,
job.
when you go to the concert, if you want Wallace, you know they're over there in the back. If you want the hot dog, you know it's over by the road. Yeah.
They like their spots.
They do. It is gonna change some this year. We're gonna go more with Spring Fling and Mardi Gras layout. But, and you'll see some of your favorites there, but this is allowing us to open up some spots for additional vendors as well. And it is all first come, first serve. It just so happens that the ones who come every year come first. So,
And people will find them.
that's right.
And Heather is also responsible for the community center. Oh, did you have a question before
Yeah,
moving on?
just two, one question and maybe one general comment. So historically, and I've brought this up in the past, so I'll bring it up again. The Parks and Rec runs a surplus on the expense side. We always over appropriate what the actual year ending expenses are. And even this year, it looks like we're still gonna be, I know the 1.7 is inflated. It realistically probably would have been more like 1.4 or whatever. So it's almost as if we have a 20% contingency built into this department's budget alone for expenses, but we don't account for a 20% contingency for other departments. If I went through and did my math correct, this seems to have the highest contingency built into the expense budget. Why? And then why aren't we reducing that contingency amount? Like, I know staff is recommending 1.3, but even 1.3 in the next fiscal year looks to be more money than what's gonna be needed. Like, this year, it looks like we're gonna spend $1 million on a 1.7. So you're lowering it to 1.3, but if we only spend $1 million again, now we're running a $300,000 surplus. You know, now that contingency is getting bigger. That's even bigger than a 20% contingency. So I guess my first question is, can we establish a expense contingency across all departments, like as policy? Like, when you come to a budget, your contingency is, 5% or 7%, whatever. I like percentages, you know that, right? Because I always look at variances over and under. And so that's question one, is contingency and budgeting. Why does this department seem like they have a higher contingency for expenses?
Okay, let me answer that one. It's not built in, intentional, never has been, to my knowledge. And I wouldn't recommend doing that. I wouldn't intentionally give a department fluff. Just wouldn't do it. I think what happened here was that some capital expenditures either weren't done or they got cheaper rates. So it may be on us to estimate our expenses better, but it's not that a arbitrary 20% contingency is ever intentionally built in.
Good. So then my next question off of that would be, is there a chance that 1.3 that staff is recommending could actually be lower for the next fiscal year? Because I don't think we're gonna spend 1.3 million in the
Haven't
next
yet.
fiscal year, because we haven't yet.
I don't think there's a lot of capital, which would be your fluctuating number built in here. The only area potentially would be contracted services. What's in the contract service line? So cleaning services, how often they get the floors done. What else is in there right here? The instructors, we have to pay each of the instructors if you end up getting somebody that does yoga for cheaper. Those were the basic contractor rates. So it's possible, I think we challenged the departments to, even though you were budgeted that amount, to be fiscally responsible when you do go buy the fitness equipment or engage in contract services and try to get the best rate. So perhaps she's done a better job of getting lower rates on some of those items. That's all built in there.
Yeah, I'm not disappointed that
Yeah,
they're not
she's doing
spending as
better.
much money as been allocated to them. I'm just trying to understand
It's never been
why
intentional.
it's always seemed like it's a significant amount of money that is appropriated that doesn't get spent.
I think that you'll see that as well in Public Works. I saw that trend. It also wasn't intentional. It's just his Greenway money didn't get spent again. You know, the sidewalks didn't get, for a variety of reasons. So if the money doesn't get spent, I don't let them go spend it on something else.
Right. But then that comes
See some
back
savings.
to our conversation about, well, we can only offer employees a 3% merit increase on average because we've accounted for, okay, this budget carries a 0 tax rate increase. But yet, if you fine tune this a little bit more, even across every department, you know, $50,000 here, $200,000 there, can that merit increase become 4% or 3.5%, right? Anything helps. So if we're able to run a tighter budget on our expenses, because we have good people overseeing these departments, then let's give that money back somewhere. Either that money goes back to reward the employees for their effort, or that money needs to go somewhere,
Love it.
right? So, and then my second question is, and it sounds like you are working harder to gain more data, more insight, look at what's going on. Because I have received inquiries from people in the public challenging, oh my gosh, why do we have a social event booked almost every week during peak season or every month of the year? What's that costing the town? How are we benefiting from that? So I know you don't have it maybe today, and you probably won't have it over the next 30 days, but at some point it would be nice to be able to break down every social calendar event and say, this is good, it was well attended, we got high positive feedback, and it didn't cost us but pennies on the dollars, and everybody had a great time. Versus, oh my gosh, this event, nobody showed up, it cost us thousands of dollars to put it on, it was poorly attended, and it just wasn't impactful to the community, right? So people are starting to look at, it's great that Oak Island offers a lot, but oh my gosh, are we offering too much? And
Beach
it's because of this-
Preservation and Art Guild was on the same day, same time.
Right, and so the other flip side of that is, I guess we don't do like interdepartment charges, because I didn't see it in the pier complex budget, but clearly they said, you know, departments are using the facility. I think there's a lot of departments involved in putting on an event that you probably don't account for. So I'm assuming that's something we can look into is interdepartment transfers. They're very common. It helps other departments not absorb so much of the cost for something when it really wasn't their fault to begin with, right? We could even call them sand dollars as a pun.
That's cute.
But I think we might want to start looking into interdepartment transfers just to help other departments out so they're not taking the whole burden on their shoulders. So,
Interdepartment transfers, is that what Middleton Park 10-625-401 last year appropriated 75,000, this year appropriated 50,000. Is that when you contact Public Works and say such and such is broke and you all take care of it?
They use that account, correct. And then that is also the account that we use to take care of the splash pad.
But if a bench is broken at Middleton Park, Parks and Rec's responsible for it, but Parks and Rec's contacts Public Works and says, we have a broken bench at Middleton Park, and then they charge you back. That's your, yeah.
Yes, you don't see it as a transfer, but it's a direct charge.
Because we have used 801 for 3 things, and we do pay the cleaning fee.
But you don't pay a rental fee. Right.
Which is the line item for the parks? I was looking for that earlier.
For Middleton,
Well, I see Middleton and I see Veterans Park expenses, but I don't see
The other 25.
expenses for the other parks.
so those would be with the public.
Scott's does parks.
Yes, yes, that's- okay.
It's because Recreation has items in those parks.
Yes.
That's why it's in our budget.
Got it.
The telephone
Middleton
expense,
was
every year
just
the
a
telephone
splash
expense is the same. Is that the basic service for the Parks and Rec building? Or is that cell phones for the employees?
I'm sorry, say that
It's
one more
not cell
time?
phones for the employees.
Yeah, the telephone charge of $3,500 every year, that's the basic telephone at
For us to
Parks
be
and
able
Rec
to,
department.
yes, correct.
So, just picking up on Mark's point, there's another way to think about it. I think we talked about this last year. So one of the things that I would be interested in is what I would call the burn rate. So when we get to the end of the budget, did we expend 98% of it? Did we only expend 89%, and why? Because that burn rate tells you how much contingency you're carrying and/or which departments didn't budget accurately. It gives you a way to think about how effective the budget actually is, right? And the problem that we've run into in the past is all these capital orders and they're delayed, and so when you, so I'd ask you to extract that and say, okay, let's just go, since Heather's at the table, what's the burn rate for rec? That's the first question Mark was really asking. Are they burning at 95%? Or do they have all this money and they didn't spend it? That's important. That's important for us to know.
I can tell you that most of the departments will come in at 95 to 98% spent on salaries, benefits, and operating. Capital is the only question mark.
Okay. But that's, I mean, I'm happy to hear that. That's telling me that this is a well-managed budget system, right? With oversight and accountability. And so there isn't a lot of contingency that's in there.
And we know that it's happening, but we don't anticipate using that. So we can see, in the audit, you see that in the end of the presentation, there's always a small amount of money that runs into fund balance. That's what you want to see. You don't want to see 101% spent. It's almost impossible to get much better than
No, you don't want to burn past
95%.
95. 'cause then
Right,
you-
and also I don't want to
70%.
do the old-fashioned way of, you better hurry up and spend it, and if you don't, we're gonna decrease you next year. That's old thinking, and we're not doing that, yeah. So I think we are at a very healthy, as you call it, a burn rate, and I look for what rolls to fund balance at the end of the year, and so in the last couple of years, it's been a couple $1 million.
So before you even bring this to us, you've sat down with each department head and said, I don't really think I can justify 86,000 here, I can justify 62,000.
Yes, we've cleaned up quite a few lines behind the scenes. Helen's been working incredibly hard with getting some other items straightened out. We've had some challenges with switching from Focus to Spectrum, or vice versa, Spectrum to Focus, the telephone bills, the power charges, all of those internal departmental transfers, getting a handle on making sure those charges are accurately going to the proper departments that they should be going to. And I will say we've cleaned up a fair amount and continue to do so. There is a lot. How many? We write 400, 500, 600 bills a month. This is a big place with a lot more going on than I ever anticipated, which is good, but also the level of cleanup to make sure that your budget is something that you can be very confident in and has that acceptable burn rate, relies on a lot of those cleaning items that I can say we've been doing
Like
a
Heather
great
was-
job on.
Was comfortable as a department head to ask for a 14-vehicle bus. But after she spoke to the town manager and the finance director, she understood that maybe I need to take that off my board. So a lot of this stuff you cleaned up before it gets to us.
Well, yeah, I will say, I will not misrepresent that the departments don't think they still might want each of those items. I wanted this to be an open dialogue about it. We, after discussions, would have recommended that we delay that bus and do some additional analysis. I think Heather understands that, and I don't want to
Agrees.
speak for you.
And
Okay,
agrees.
good. But yeah.
So in presenting the budget, which if it truly lands at no tax increase and full retention of services, well, I don't know if there'll be applause, but people should be very pleased. But one of the things that needs to be part of that presentation is, call it something other than burn rate, that's confusing to people, but effectively, the way this budget is being managed, right? The things that we need have been ordered, they've been accounted for, and we have executed the strategic plan, right? And we're not carrying large contingencies, we're not rolling over money, nor are we underspending. I know that's hard for some people who have never looked at a budget, but that's what the public needs to hear. Like, the services that you demanded were met. The things that you need arrived, and we didn't have a huge chunk of money, nor did we miss. And the only fly in the ointment is capital, of course, because you order a fire truck and who knows, So take that out of the equation. Everything else is taught, and that's really what you want, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know for 4 years I keep talking about variances, but that's the measurement. You want to tell the public that we are operating a budget within a 2 or 3% variance. You can even say 5, but you set a mark. As a policy group, we say our goal is to end the fiscal year with a surplus, but that surplus needs to be less than 5%, right? You set a mark, because if you all of a sudden start running a surplus of 20 or 30% at the end of the year, the taxpayers are going to figure out that, that's almost a half a cent on the property tax rate. And if they see a half a cent show up as a surplus in the budget, they're going to come and ask for a half-cent reduction in the tax rate, right? And forget about talking about when do we increase tax rates,
You
or
don't
how
need
do
the
we
money you're
increase tax
asking
rates.
for.
You got to worry about the public catching on that there should be a decrease in the tax rate because you're running a surplus in your budget. So that's why those variance percentages are so important, because they're easy to calculate. And if you established a policy, you just very quickly say, yep, we're within policy, move on, right? On to the next one.
Well, that augments what we already have. So the slide that Catherine showed, we should show that over and over again. Here's our tax rate. Oh, look at that, it's a flat line, right? Here's our burn rate. We're at less than 5 or whatever it actually is, but it's, we are expending money wisely, attaining the things we need. That's great in a budget presentation, because people out there are thinking we're frivolous with the money, we're spending it,
Right.
hoarding it, or whatever. That takes care of, tax rate has been stable, and budgets are run effectively. That's,
Well,
So
something
far,
that-
2 presentations, they've justified what they asked for. And we can probably stand with it.
She has one more segment. I want to make sure she has time for the community center. Ready?
So the community center is next door. As we know, BSRI brings food 4 days a week, and then our staff's there to offer other activities. And then on one Friday a month, BSRI brings food again, and then the other 3 Fridays, they go on a trip or have a bag lunch where they can bring their own lunch and then come participate in activities. We currently do have that 11-passenger bus over there, and that allows us to pick up and drop off residents who live on the island, and then it also allows for them to have transportation for the trips as well.
Is that mostly Oak Island residents?
I'm glad you asked. Great question.
Part of it?
We've been doing this analysis.
Yes, so I have some numbers for February and March. So we have, I'm going to tell you 2 things. First of all, we have a core group of residents and non-residents participants that are coming. So I'm going to give you the number of people who've come, and this might count Susie, who comes 5 days a week, 5 times a week. So, and then I'm gonna tell you those larger numbers, how they break down into individuals. Okay, so in February, we had 380 people attend, which included 37 clients that were residents and 9 clients that were non-residents.
Say that one more time.
Yeah.
Sure, so of the 380 attendees, it included 37 clients that were residents and then 9 that were non-residents. And again, that was February.
Well, that totals 46, but you said 380.
Because she has to take attendance every day for the amount of people there. So,
Same person.
I'll help you.
thank you.
Susie could come 50 times, and she's a non-resident.
So out of those 380 is 46 different people.
Yeah, so the original numbers were totals, and I asked her to make sure that we understood how many individual residents versus non-residents, not just,
So 20% are
showed up.
Oak Island and 80% are Oak Island. Or
In February.
25.
In February. And then in March, there were 49 people total, and 38 were residents and 11 were non-residents. And that was March.
Why the drop, do you think? Significant drop.
No,
No, it's 3 more people. February was 46
Okay, never mind.
and March was 49.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't have my glasses on, I almost said 48.
So one person is almost attending 10 days or 10 events a month
Fair.
at the community center.
Yes.
it's the
Just
same,
under
few
10.
people are just coming a lot.
Yeah.
We're basically serving 50 people.
what's considered a senior age? 40-year-old people show up for this?
So for BSRI, in order to eat for free, it is $60. I mean, no, sorry, 60-year-olds.
age.
And yes, and then if you're under 60, then you pay $5, and when they come pick their dishes up, that money goes back with them.
But it's mostly seniors.
And let me also say, if you have to have an assistant, that person does also get to eat for free. A lot of times they don't, but they have the option.
And the food comes from?
Ours comes from Shallotte. BSRI has 3 kitchens in Brunswick County, but ours comes from Shallotte. And they deliver it to us, and we don't pay a fee for that.
And that's
There is a
county.
fee, but we have a grant for it.
That's county, BS, yeah.
It's essentially Meals on Wheels, but it's a congregate site. So you don't qualify for Meals on Wheels if you are still ambulatory and can get onto the bus or get yourself to a site. But they notice there's still a need for, especially at that, if you're still able to get out at that age, you need the socialization. So that's why they started offering the communal eating sites.
What percent, in your opinion, of the community center activity is meal-related?
10%.
Only 10%? Okay.
They do a lot.
So I do a lot of other things.
Well,
Maybe that's
wait,
not fair.
Yeah, let's
That might not be
reframe
fair.
that. They're there from
because
10 to
They're there from 10 to 2, they eat for an hour, but they are coming for the meal, so 40%, right? Because they wouldn't be there if the meal wasn't happening.
I was asking
But
that
10%
question
of
for the
their
rec
time
center,
is
community
spent-
center discussion that goes on
Oh, sure.
other community, on other committee, but
Sure.
I was
It's a really good question, because if
It is.
those meal people are there for pretty much the whole day, is there anything else that goes on there besides that day?
if they weren't given a free meal that
it's
day, they
not.
may not show up to play canasta.
Right.
Or because they're there till 3, there's not another event, another group, another function that can happen? A little bit at 3 or 4 o'clock, but it doesn't.
I mean, and it could be adjusted to have the activities before lunch, still have the activities, have lunch, to your point, have something else there.
That's what I'm trying to do, is increase the use of that building. We got 50 people using that building, and our staff and our buses and
Two-
everything.
two
We've
full-time
got to be
staff.
able to utilize that better. We want to serve more people. We want to be able to do more things, not just serve the same 50 people lunch every day.
The only thing
How
the
can we
county,
do more for people?
sorry, the only thing the county's compensating us for is the food,
Personnel.
That's correct.
not transportation expenses, not,
You're
There-
a different silver sneakers and different classes at the rec center. Can some of those age appropriate be done at the community center?
They could. They do have an instructor that volunteers and does chair yoga. We'll do gold Zumba. So they offer some things there. I mean, they could come to the rec center. I haven't seen any of them do that.
If they had the transportation.
Well, true.
But because of this current program, the community center then, if I'm hearing correctly, is only available a few hours in the morning and a few hours in the afternoon for other activities, groups.
Only in the afternoon. In the morning, they're doing prep work, and then they start coming around 9. So really only after 2:30, 3 o'clock. Currently, the way it's set up currently.
And we're talking fees on so many different things. Anything that takes place at the community center is no charge.
That's not true. If it's rented, I mean, if it's a rental, there are rental rates.
But 65-year-old man or woman
Sorry.
were to go there for silver sneakers or golden, whatever it's called, and at the community center as opposed to the rec center. They would pay $5 at the rec center, they would get it free at the community center?
Yes, which is why we don't offer the same things, but yes, that is, sorry, you're right. They are not paying anything to come if they're 60 or over. You're correct.
Food is a driver. I want to be careful about how we message that, because if you talk to either those that attend and or their family members, there is a high level of satisfaction, I would say, for the socialization benefits and some of the physical benefits.
For sure, it is a benefit to those coming and to their families. I think what we're saying is maybe that there's room to have that offered in addition to other things.
Yep.
There's definitely a need, and especially in the community we live in the demographics. It's a strong need, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's also a consideration for the utilization of facilities. We have senior events at 2 different locations. Don't worry about the fee schedule because you can charge fee. The building location doesn't prohibit a fee schedule. So you've got senior activities going on at 2 different locations that require transportation needs to participate, and you're servicing, 50 people at a location who may not have access to senior activities at another location. Whereas if there was a way to bring those together under one facility, you may drive more participation, which would result in driving more programming enhancements or additions. It just would be a better overall experience for that community who is seeking that kind of activity. I'll just leave it there because, we're trying to figure that out. Right?
200% agree.
Find out what they want.
And do we know what, if any, duplication of services exists between the Oak Island Senior Center and the private senior center? How do those two?
I don't know a lot about what they offer. I know that their structure is you have to pay to be a member there, and then you also have to volunteer a certain amount of hours at their front desk. But that's all I know. The senior center.
The senior
Sorry,
center.
the senior center.
Yeah, so their primary focus is crafting activities. So they have a lot of programming where members can come in, and there's usually some sort of crafting activity that's been predefined, like there's a schedule. Like today is wreath making, or tomorrow is, make a paperweight or a birdhouse, or there's predefined craft activities. But then the benefit is those crafts, they have the option to immediately turn those around, and it's a retail store. So you can walk in off the street and shop at that senior center to drive revenue for them, right? So it's primarily a crafting retail atmosphere, because my wife and I have made numerous donations to that group. because of all of the crafting activities. It's kind of a unique situation, but it's a good model that works for them.
Now, is that Brunswick County sponsored, or is that Ocala?
I don't think they have any sponsorship.
They're not
Yeah.
under our umbrella,
It's member-based driven, and then retail sales.
but not in competition in any way with our community center.
No, there's no,
They don't provide the meals, if that's what you mean.
Or our type of activities.
We do have a craft on Wednesdays, but it's not to the level.
right, yeah. The community center has like movies, board games. There is a craft day where they're literally driven by crafting activities because it builds inventory for their retail.
Yeah.
So, 10-minute break?
Okay.
Can we come back at, no later than, please?
11:25. Thank you.
So moved.
Thank you.
So moved.
I haven't heard of it, but. Catherine, whenever you're ready.
Ready. I'm sure I didn't miss.
We are back from break, and Catherine, back to you.
Great, thank you. Well, we're going to touch briefly on golf. If I can get my next slides to pull up for you. Today started with pier and some of the rec center and golf, and you'll see the continuous tone of making sure we are, sorry, I'm trying to delay while I get the golf one pulled up. Mike, you got the slides for golf, please? Thank you. Continuous efforts to streamline the budget, to look for efficiencies, and more importantly, making sure that we're addressing revenues. I think the revenue side of some of these enterprise funds are critical to their expenditure side, and we're trying to increase rates where necessary, and make sure that we're able to balance each of these funds independently outside of the general fund. Golf fund is next in line for you on your budgets, detailed budget expenditures. You will see they start with the fund number 38. And you'll recall golf has two components. They have 38,501, and they have 38,738 as their department numbers. For a total, if you total those two sections together, 690 is $39,000 was their requested, and the recommendation was 534. And what I'd like to do is just have this high-level conversation about golf in general and reserve the detailed expenditure questions for Scott, who will be here during the Public Works discussions. I want him to have the same opportunity that everybody else does to go through golf expenditures. But overall, as you know, we've continued to struggle to balance the golf fund. The general fund has subsidized the golf course to the tune of, last year was $350,000. Currently, it is in there for reduction of that to $300,000. So we're moving in the right direction. There are some, right, they have done a good job of getting some recommended fee increases this year. We're trying to make sure that they too understand the process, that you all, the town council, is the authority on not just the expense side, but also on the revenue side. And the fees must be approved by council for changes. And so they have done a good job of presenting those, and they are prepared in the numbers on the general, on the revenue side for golf, and still leaves us with that, that difference.
Are we any closer on coming to an agreement with the HOA in South Harbor on alcohol sales?
I think that would be a Scott question for you. I thought that was,
I think that's part of the capital outlay this year.
and especially when we do it on our own property out there, I thought we'd already worked through that, and they have the authority to do that.
That could offset the $31,000 deficit.
When you look at, I made a note, the Pier House, you know, they've $45,000 in beer and wine, and something very similar to the Par 3 with their investment in building a structure, which
Yeah.
Scott will talk about.
On fees, have we, I don't see any mention of yearly passes for either South Harbor residents or Oak Island residents.
Have we passed these out yet?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there selling an annual pass? At a discount for the South Harbor residents or Oak Island residents?
You talking about membership fees?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It-
Another way to generate revenue.
What's the answer?
The answer is they do. So residents get a discount.
But do
No,
they
but
get a
is there
yearly
a
discount?
season?
A yearly pass?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, no, the annual pass is two different price tiers.
So what you have in front of you is the recommendation from the Par 3 board. We did not adjust this in any way.
Oh, there's a back page.
Yes, there is.
But I don't think they have the information you're looking for, which
Still
is
not.
what's the membership fee for a year.
Yeah.
Do you know, Bob, did that go up?
I'm looking, I know it's in the proposal we worked on.
Because these pages, the annual fees are just offsetting the fertilizer.
Say that again?
The annual fees, the annual revenue we're generating is just offsetting what I'm seeing over here as fertilizer expenses for the year, 38,000.
Got it, okay.
Chemicals and fertilizer for the year, proposed 42,000 for next year. But the revenue's only 37,000. New revenues.
I mean, they have not had a fee increase in a number of years, so this would be the first increase in maybe 3 or 4 years.
So here's the revenue breakdown.
There you
You're asking
go.
about membership rates, 40,250 of their total revenues, but as you can see, the transfer from the general fund still is by far the majority revenue. So the question has been presented to me, and so I will pass this along to you. Is there any appetite for discussing, in the budget process, part of the discussion is organizational structure. So from a board perspective, there's been talks of, is it more beneficial to be a part of the recreation department or to consider, that's fully organizationally in the town, or board-wise, is there some additional benefit to having the boards work closer together? We've tried to create the efficiencies between the rec center or the rec department and golf so that they help promote each other's events. They're in the lobby when you walk in, all the Par 3 literature. We've tried to encourage them working together. I know Hallie's even been assisting on the marketing side with the golf course, so we've been trying to work together, but it is really a unique situation because it's partly a park and it's partly a rec center or recreation item. So and yet it stands alone by itself under Public Works. So I guess bottom line is I'm not thrilled with the structure of it, I certainly don't want to upset the apple cart, but I'm always looking for more efficient organizational structure. And I pose that question to you all if you have any thoughts or feedback on changes needed. Because clearly we're going to continue to subsidize this very heavily.
At initial thought, I don't necessarily want to put it under the recreation department. Initial thought. They have enough on their plate. And although it's costing us an arm and a leg, I can't throw rocks at the efforts they're taking out there. They've cleaned up their greens, they've cleaned up their appearance. I don't think they need another big brother standing on top of them. They just need some more revenue.
Yeah, I mean, maintaining a golf course is truly a landscape effort. Seeding, fertilizing, watering, and the infrastructure that goes with that. So I think that's why it's under Public Works and likely, I think it should stay, under Public Works. My comment would be, so one comment would be, I like the fee increase. I think it's long overdue. Because I believe the condition of the course has improved tremendously over the last 3 to 4 years, when this council 4 years ago decided to, hey, let's make some changes, right? I think they changed some irrigation, and we brought in some people and did some, overseeding and things. So I think the condition of the course has improved. So I certainly agree that it's time to increase fees. I would suggest that maybe this proposed fee increase is not enough, but that's just my opinion.
You have sticker shock too.
Well, I don't think this is sticker shock is what I'm saying, what we've got here right now. In general, even charging $2 a hole to play, you're looking at $36, with a cart. That's still a very reasonable price, even for a par 3 course, especially with conditions improving out there. When you've got, regulation courses charging up near $100 to play one round. So it would still be the best deal in town for beginners and learners of all ages, even if we went up just a few dollars more, which would also help, bring in more revenue. The other thing I don't see in here is where's the merchandise revenue? I thought we did some improvements in that area where we kind of refreshed the inventory, brought in some new merchandise. We just heard from the Pier and 801 Center that merchandise is flying off the shelf. So maybe we need to look at, more merchandising or improved merchandising. I don't know what the quality is of the merchandising that's going on out there.
Golf towels, t-shirts, hats.
Yeah, but certainly the town of Oak Island logo, I think, carries its own brand, right? It's very popular. I can't tell you the number of times in travels outside the area, I see our logo. I see Oak Island on sweatshirts and t-shirts and hats and all kinds of stuff. So we've got our own brand recognition.
Every time somebody comes cash register, she sells a decal.
So with our brand recognition, we should be offering quality merchandise at every stopping point that is our property, right? So I think that's something, I don't know what the status is on that. And then, of course, we've talked for years about beer and wine sales, and I know the committee has looked into that. There's been discussions about even another structure in the vicinity that would just do the beer and wine. I think a beverage cart is also a big plus if we're not already looking into that. So I think there are ways to drive additional revenue streams out there. We just have to, put wood behind the arrow, so to speak, and encourage those activities to fruition.
It's been our forgotten asset for 15 years.
Yeah.
We complain about it every year, and then we do nothing else to enhance it.
Bob, what do you think? You're closest to it.
We have to be very careful to make sure we're not out of line with respect to neighboring courses. So even with what seems to be a small increase, percentage-wise, it's, double digits, 27, 25, 21% increase. And it still keeps us in line with the lakes. Old Fort, this Inland Green is a par 3. So we're still in good shape. I think Catherine, to your point about synergies, that if Jean is saying she can't keep the merchandise in stock, the golf course, they have limited space out there, but they really don't, they have very little. They have T-shirts, maybe some polo
Collared
shirts, but
shirts.
maybe there's an opportunity for some synergies there.
I think you're right, and I've spoken with Gina about that, and she's done such a fantastic job. There might be a way that, because she does ordering, instead of them driving to Costco or Sam's to pick up products, we could work together
So you
on
get a
her
volume
ordering,
Send me 200 T-shirts.
better
150.
pricing. We'll be happy to look into that from the
Yeah, then the second thing,
merchandising.
yeah, because there was a pricing, I know we talked about this, there's a pricing difference. The drinks and the snacks at the Par 3 are more expensive than they are in the Pier House. So there's an opportunity there again to either raise one or lower the other. But that
Get 'em sold.
buying power, right, if we're getting it from the same
What's it take to
location.
sell them?
Well, I mean, the pathway here remains the same. I mean, I was on the golf committee in 15, 16, and the challenge is the same. Can you increase the number of rounds? Can you increase the number of memberships? And memberships is critical because they're Oak Island residents, so then they see the value, you know, you've got a natural constituency that is supporting the subsidy, right? At the same time, you're
Yeah.
driving the subsidy down. And so that, you know, 8% is really, if that's 16 or 20%, right? That's what you want. I think they did a fairly good job there. 15,000 rounds, can we get to 20? How do we do that? You know, I'm sure the committee is thinking about that.
They are, and there's a finite amount, right? Eventually,
Yeah.
you reach capacity. I don't know I don't remember what that level is, but, you know, they're doing some cool things. They're doing like glow golf, so playing at night. They're working with First Tee now and a couple other organizations. So Jonathan has just absolutely been an amazing resource. He's good from a strategy perspective as well as from he's an amazing turf guy. He knows turf.
Good.
And what he's done out there is what a difference.
Are they talking about possibly youth tournaments or lady tournaments?
Oh, yeah, they probably do 10 or 12 tournaments a year.
Okay.
They got one coming up, I think next month or June.
Is that revenue generating?
It does, well, it gets more players out there. But then the proceeds, the proceeds are gonna go to Seabiscuit, or the profits are gonna go to Seabiscuit.
Maybe we can keep some of the profit for,
Yeah, so they're really trying different things to increase the number of golfers. Connect them closer to the 801 Center and bundling some of the offers to get more people out there.
What I see, though, to Catherine's point, is a bifurcated Parks and Recreation system. And is there a benefit, so the golf course does their advertising seemingly, and there's...
They are.
And then the Parks and Rec, it's like, it's all Parks and Rec. And you're requiring people to go to two venues on the internet or on our website, as opposed to everything being channeled through one. There's this lack of synergy that I think hurts the golf course. And that's something I'd like to see their committees work more closely together. There was an effort that then fell short. They just stopped going to each other's meetings. I think that's hurtful. But it's all one thrust, but we don't treat it like that. I think we're really hurting ourselves revenue-wise and participation-wise, although those are conjoined, by forcing the golf course to go its own way outside of all around Parks and Rec. We also think about our course is a par 3, when in fact it was built as a shorter 18 course, full course. So it's really more than a par 3, but less than some of the other private courses around us. So it's an anomaly. But as long as we continue to think of it as a par 3, then we perhaps are limiting
Discount is the deal.
ourselves. And then we also thinking about it just as learners, when in effect, I think, from what I've heard from the committee, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, is that it's really a multi-generational venue that, you know, the people that play the big courses, the serious golfers, it's an opportunity to introduce their family members to the game of golf and participate in something that the private courses would be less tolerant of, you know, to have someone who's learning the game. And so I think there are other ways to market this as well. I think the alcohol sales would be a big plus, to your point, Mark. But I really would like to see them become more integrated. When 801 was, when we were heavily subsidizing 801, David had the wisdom to create the Pier Complex, right? So that we're looking at an overall picture, not just the smaller pictures. And I think that if we bring this back in some way, shape, or form, for marketing purposes, if nothing else, as an umbrella organization, I think there'd be benefits all the way around, especially with some training for volunteers, you know, cross-training for volunteers and as potentially staff. But the upkeep is similar to the situation that we have with Parks and Rec, and with Scott doing the park maintenance and the facility maintenance for recreation. The same thing would be for Jonathan and maintaining the golf course, yet the programs exist as recreational programs, and they'll be all marketed in the same way. The other question I have for you that comes to mind at this point, Catherine, is, so we use Square for a lot of our financial intake. Square has storefronts. Have we investigated having a storefront where people could buy materials, could buy eyewear from a storefront where they could get golf course, they could get pier, they can get fishing, they can get, you know, whatever is offered. Oak Island wide, they could buy whatever kind of gear that they were looking for. They could get stickers, they could get, you know, parking decals. They, just as an outlet for what we have. And is it worth experimenting to see if that would increase revenue?
Well, I think you raise a good point, particularly with Parks and Rec, and it probably also carries over and applies to the golf course as well. We have a great maintenance system in place for our parks. They're well taken care of by Public Works. We do not have a visionary for those spaces for programming them. And so, you know, I'm hearing, why do we have so many parks? Maybe we should take some of them away because we don't ever do anything in them.
Or passive.
So, you know, my question continues to be, I believe we need a visionary for our parks. We need some way for them to get programmed for better use.
So there's active and passive parks, and most communities want to keep some ratio of both. So help me with what you would like to see us look into. Taking more passive parks and making them activity run?
Most of our parks are beautiful. We have some that are in really cool locations, and I drive by them every week and there's not a soul there.
Yeah,
Nothing going on.
Better Park's
And,
beautiful.
you know, they're, what?
It's a Veterans Park, I said it's full all the time.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about Veterans Park, but some of our smaller parks, I think there are opportunities to do outdoor things there. But we don't have any, I don't feel like we have anybody who's looking at that
Yeah.
and saying, this is, you
Parks
know.
and Rec Board, that's not something that is in their master plan or on their,
Haven't ever brought anything to it.
They,
okay. That's good, awesome.
they are the ones who believe there needs to be a visionary, someone who has a vision for our parks that's not happening now.
So that'll be interesting to see what comes forth in their master
But
plan.
we talked about that on Monday at the steering committee, at the
Right.
Comprehensive Land Use Plan Steering Committee
Right.
meeting.
Right. So I think the master plan should address some of that. I would be disappointed if it didn't. And of course, you know, having open space in any community is important, and I think our parks offer us some of that open space. I'm not saying you're not right, because I do think we need some better usage. In the CLUP, I saw lists of names of parks. I had no clue where they were because I've never associated the parks with a name. Not all of the parks that have names have a sign that tells you what park that is. So I think there's some recognition efforts that could be increased. Parks that don't have names, are there sponsorship opportunities there? So I do see a number of opportunities, and I think it's clear that we're just not thinking in that direction. But back to the golf course, I think programmatically, there needs to be more synergy, opportunities for cross-training. This, other than location, and one is over the bridge, and many of the other activities, save Bill Smith Park or not, but even the things at Bill Smith Park are integrated to Parks and Rec. But somehow the golf course is its own thing, and I think it's time, in some way, shape, or form, be it organizationally, be it programmatically, for these things to come back so that there's a synergism there that would help the golf course, in my opinion, and increase
I don't see an
revenue.
advertising request from the par threes.
They've got 4,000 in.
Online,
Yeah. I mean, Howie advertised out up with his sign pointing toward them.
Yeah.
Well, that's only because DOT doesn't provide us with much. With the DOT's right-of-way on Long Beach Road, we're
Yeah,
restricted
there's not
as to
much
what we
there,
can
but with
post.
the lighted sign now, that's an opportunity for us.
I was gonna ask that. We need to put that on
I think
the
we-
new billboard.
I could not agree more. I don't know what the arrangement that we struck with that.
I read it every time I go by. I read to see who's advertising.
Yeah. What are you gonna say? Look, a half mile down the road to your left.
You just passed it.
You just passed it. I mean, the billboard is a good idea, but it's kind of not relevant to location.
Well, it's a
Although I think
two-sided
there was a
billboard.
proposal to put another billboard down in that commercial area of the airport that would have been more beneficial. But as far as the golf course goes, as far as an organization structure, I understand, I hear what you're saying, Liz, but we have to remember, we don't own, we own the Parks and Rec building, we own the pier, we own 801. We're just under a short-term, I call it short-term, maybe it's more of a temporary contractual obligation for the golf course. That has an end date to it. And some future council is gonna have to make that decision. Do they renew that contract or do they get out, right? And so the golf course is a little tricky. We have to keep it going and try to make it break even, but at the same time, at what risk do we invest too much money into something that a future council may decide it's not worth renewing this and we walk away from it? From a par 3 perspective, there are pros and cons to marketing Pro 3 golf courses. Some par 3 golf courses do very well, others not so well. I think we're kind of in the middle, right? I think we're not on the low end where we're not doing well, but we're not, doing really well either. And I think a lot of that is marketing and promotion. You know, I've suggested before that there's nothing that prohibits us from, when someone books a wedding at the 801 Center, to say, here's a coupon for 25% off of the wedding party. Not everybody who attends the wedding, but just the wedding party themselves. Because usually at a wedding, the wedding party does get some sort of little gift or special treatment. There's usually activities planned specifically for the wedding party when they have a wedding. So that could be an option, is to try to encourage the wedding party, hey, you're here on Sunday, before you leave, swing by the par 3 and play around the golf. Here's a 25% coupon or something like that. I have looked at the course in terms of it being a par 3 versus trying to create some sort of regulation type of course that has a par 4s or par 5s on it. There's absolutely no way you can convert that into an 18-hole regulation course.
No.
But there would be an option to convert it into a 9-hole regulation course. And there are successful municipal golf courses throughout the United States that are 9-hole courses. You just have 2 flags in every green. The blue flag is the front
But again,
9, the
that's for
yellow
a
flag
7-year
is.
That's for a
is
7-year project.
Exactly, that would be a long-term, hey, we want to, this is something we want to cultivate, we're going to invest in it. We don't want future councils to back out of this agreement. Is a 9-hole regulation course better than a par 3 course, right? But there's way more analysis that has to be done before we can make that decision. So
One of our meetings, somebody who, not sitting around the table now, but at one of our budget meetings, someone said, how much money do you want to spend at the par 3? It's just a question, do you want to spend $50,000, $100,000, or $300,000, but you're going to spend.
right.
Oh, municipal par 3s, when the research that the committee did, we were unable to find any municipal par 3 in the country
Making money.
that turned a profit. Yeah. It's just how
That's
much
how I
money,
see it.
how much money you need to be subsidized.
Yeah.
You know, turn into a 9-hole. Possibly, it's a very tight course though. So if all of a sudden you've got you got 300 yards off the tee, these houses are going to get bombed.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that's a possibility. Could be. I don't want to preclude that. And then at some point when that deed is, I don't recall off the top of my head, I don't have a copy with me. When the deed is up, there'll be decisions that will need to be made.
I think our 2025 answer is push hard for the beer and wine sales.
Well, that will help, but I guess my question is, going back to driving membership and driving rounds, is the advertising budget, is the committee satisfied with that, or do you need more? What do you need?
Well, you think 801 is, their advertising budget is $6,000.
Okay.
So collectively, between that organization, two areas that are really losing money year over year, we're spending $10,000 to market them. So, I don't know, I think.
They doubled their request. They asked for 2,000 last year. They're asking for 4,000.
Yeah.
So that's an increase.
No, the year before was 2,000, and we met with them a year ago, and so last budget, we doubled their advertising budget from 2,000 to 4,000. And that's the budget they're in currently, $4,000. They've only spent $594. They're not spending what we doubled. Currently.
It's a vision. And Hallie's been an amazing help, but Hallie's being torn in a lot of different directions. So really the committee, so you leave it up to maybe Jonathan to get the advertising done, and Jonathan is torn in a lot of different directions as well, from a maintenance perspective.
Well-
So you're lacking that little bit of that vision, like how to get the word out through advertising.
So before we give them more money, given what you're saying, Bob,
Game plan.
yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Give us a marketing
Oh, yeah.
plan. We can support a marketing plan that reduces that number, right? By 10, 20%, even a modest reduction would be helpful,
Yeah.
right? But I don't want to throw money at a committee that doesn't have a plan, right? So
It
how
goes
can
back
this
to
be-
Mark's
I would agree.
example.
How can it be marketed? There's got to be a way to sell it. And I can tell you from my experience years ago now, we couldn't get the realtors to help us. They didn't want to give out information for us. We couldn't get a banner over Oak Island Drive. There are a lot of things that can be done, right? And the members, to the extent that they want this course to continue, can find other members. There needs to be a whole campaign here. And I think 20,000 rounds or 18,000 rounds and 14% membership, just that alone will drive down the subsidy that we're providing. And then if you have alcohol sales, you know, you might even get closer to 2 as opposed to 3.
So it's a gem in our landscape and in our recreation program. I would hate to lose it, and I've been of the opinion, since I've been in office, that we need to prove to ourselves that by investing modestly in the golf course and upgrading it, and with the marketing program, a marketing plan and program, we need to prove to ourselves that it is not a viable entity. It's a rarity for a municipality to have that kind of a recreational opportunity, which is exactly what it is. And I think we talk about bundling, if you will, activities. Why aren't we bundling marketing? That's not happening because the golf course sits over here as its own entity. So we made some long strides in increasing the use of Bill Smith Park. I think we need to, although be conservative, I do think we need to make some long strides in promoting the golf course, be it through membership, be it through whatever, to make that number smaller. Because quite frankly, in any municipality, recreation is not a revenue generator. Recreation is a commitment to your citizens that you have a variety of opportunities to maintain health, that you have a healthy, mentally, physically, emotionally, that and which includes gatherings, you know, different ways in which people can gather. So I really would hate to lose that as an entity, but I would look for stronger co-marketing opportunities, increase sale of merchandise, along with the beer and the wine opportunity to be able to take advantage of that. I just think there's a lot more that we could do together synergistically to help the golf course than continue to let it, like Bill Smith Park, stand alone and isolated.
Yeah, I
think
mean, I'll
Bob-
say it
what-
again.
What Bob alluded to is, I think, is right on. Jonathan and the advisory board at Parks and Rec are willing to go gung-ho and do anything they can, but they need guidance. He needs, Jonathan or the board, they're not advertising gurus, they need some guidance on that part of it. Part of it, they're willing to run and gun, they just need a direction. We can answer some of the questions on beer and wine and membership and all this and that, but the advisory board just needs us or Andy or somebody that knows more about that kind of stuff to point them in some directions to help them along.
Yeah, the good news is that the capital outlays are pretty much done, right? So Jonathan's got the equipment he needs, and he's done a lot of work that he needs to do. So at least for the next several years, other than potentially building a structure to sell beer and wine, which Scott will talk about.
Social media hurt him a couple years ago, saying the greens were so terrible and I can't play on that.
Yeah.
But those days are behind us.
Yeah, they're behind us.
And they need to let the public know those days are behind us and come take a look at us.
Right. I think a new approach, just in general, across all of what Oak Island offers for not only residents but visitors. Like I said, we are now a brand. We are recognized out in the marketplace. We need to take advantage of that. Liz has a great point. We should have a storefront where if someone sees our merchandise on their friend and says, oh yeah, we vacationed there and had a wonderful time, we want them to come to a storefront and buy a sweatshirt
Buy the beach life.
and not even, they may not even have come here yet, but they're buying merchandise and planning a future visit, right? We need to get the brand more widely exposed and take advantage of that. The second and last point on the golf course that I'll bring up, I continue to hear that the disc golf tournament at the par 3 was a huge success. Now, I don't know if we have like information on, you know, the cost versus revenue for the disc golf tournament out there as a separate project, but I know we offer disc golf in the trees at Bill Smith Park, but disc golf is becoming an increasingly popular sport. More tournaments, more recognition, you know, some high-profile players are in the press playing disc golf. And so either we encourage more disc golf tournaments at the par 3 if it was that successful, or even try to figure out a way to accommodate a permanent disc golf course out there that you're charging people for to play on a nicely manicured, you know, structured course instead of playing in the trees at Bill Smith Park, and you charge them for it. You know, I think for the tournament, I think the whole placement, so to speak, for the catching mechanism was out of the way of the greens, because we didn't want to damage the greens or anything. So if we can place disc golf, you know, hole locations beyond the greens, so there's no traffic on the greens or damage to that, and if it's hugely successful, you know, again, these are creative ideas that, and you say, you know, people don't know what to do. All they have to do is listen to, this will be online. They can tune in and listen to all of our conversations and be like, hey, town council's talking about this and that, and maybe we should look in. I mean, yes, maybe we can draft a formal document to send out to committees, but they should be listening in to our conversations and helping cue ideas up, right? Just from what our conversations.
Current 2 or 3 times in a row. Take a look at the par 3, look at the improvements. We're so excited about the par 3 course. I mean, 100 more people showed up because of the current advertising.
Yep.
They'll tell 300 more.
Well, I think there's a lot of room for creativity, and I think both Liz and Mark make good points that if it's a larger campaign beyond just the golf course, but it's about parks and the beach and the town. And, you know, a number of years ago, we had an interesting proposal. A gentleman came and pitched an electronic kiosk, which we would install downstairs, where you could get tickets, or you could get interactive maps, you could find out where all the parks were. He talked about setting up a visitor's center, you know, as you come in. There are all kinds of things that we can do. Again, we don't necessarily at this table have a marketing expertise, but a marketing campaign for the island and its features would help us maximize the visitors who are here, would maximize the golf course, and certainly to your point, Terry, like, I don't know where the 60 parks are, and I've lived here for 15 years. There are a lot of parks, right? So all of those things would be possible, plus the events for Parks and Rec, you know, and a lot of communities, you know, vacation communities, have kiosks, have visitor centers, and you show up and there's plenty of information. You can find anything you want. There's usually a person there, right? And this is where we call Howie up and we say, okay, love your sign, and right underneath that, right?
Kiosks.
There's a kiosk, maybe a visitor
That's
center.
that's
We
in the
adopted
plans.
That's the plan.
Absolutely.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
And there, I
Okay,
just,
well,
Yeah, that's right.
Good.
let's
We
move
need to make
forward.
it happen.
So I don't want to interrupt a good discussion, but if we get bogged down on golf, you have less than 1 hour and we've got 3 more to go.
all right.
I do want to say, before you leave golf, there was a capital comment, and they did request a considerable additional amount of capital. And I will say that we had to cut a $75,000, another new piece of equipment to balance what you see before you. So if they add that back in, you'll be subsidizing at $375,000. Just, we'll leave that till we get to their
Those pieces
details
of equipment that they
expenses.
need, can they borrow that kind of stuff from Public Works?
Perhaps, I think that's a Scott question when he gets here, if you don't mind. All right, we want to quickly move on to the town council's budget. It should be the very next one in your line after the rec department. It starts with the numbers 10-410. And we took a shot at developing this budget for you, but it's open for your discussions. There are some increases in there that Helen's going to walk you through based on recommendations that we have heard from you all.
Right, so some of the increases, are actually for items here in the chambers, as far as, programming for touch screens for the computers. They're asking for $5,000 for that. And then a video switcher. I'm not a tech person, so that's something that Mike could probably tell you more what that is, but that's an $8,000, item. So that's all in video and taping supplies. So that's why you see the increase in that line. And that, I'm sorry, that's 10-410-2101. And then under special projects, we have some speakers that we probably need to update. So that's $5,000 of that. Some public art projects, $5,000. And then the big item in here is the UNCW grad students for the Rink to Reef thing project.
Well, it's not Rink to Reef, back up. It's not the Rink to Reef project. So this goes back to what I talked to, that I was working on, a memorandum of understanding. I've gotten the first draft from UNCW College of Science and Engineering. They have the capacity to help us with both shorelines. So for instance, Mark, you frequently talk about the Moffitt and Nichol contract. UNCW has the contract for monitoring sand transport for, now it just went out of my head, the shoals, right? So they also do for other municipalities, they do the erosion monitoring, right? So these are ways in which we might be able to reduce some of our funding. Another department under the college is working on, they do a lot with shoreline, and working with an academic institution gives us the opportunity and access to grants, because our universities watch grants like a hawk. That's how they navigate. So I'm happy to share the memorandum of understanding. I'd like Catherine to look at it first to make sure it's ready for prime time, for y'all's eyes. But there's another component of that. So we've talked about having to shore up our ICW shoreline, if nothing else, at street ends. The PTC 8, our end of street bulkheads, took a real beating. And so rather than to heavily invest in something we're not sure is going to optimally work, one of the things I've been talking about with them is both for Veterans Park and May Moore Park to set up, the idea is 3 different methods for growing oysters. So one of those methods is working with the company Rink to Reef to suspend broken hockey sticks, which are carbon, the carbon in the hockey sticks is chemically inert. And then there are 2 other North Carolina companies that make 2 different style structures, concrete structures that would help to grow oysters. So that we have an opportunity here to not only create a educational venue, if you will, at May Moore Park, and other areas to learn what do we want to invest in, what's gonna work here. It's ripe for grants. The educational component makes that. The $30,000 that is in here helps to offset graduate students that would help to develop that. It would help to pay for the structures themselves. And then we would have their time to collect the data for efficacy. We could set it up as docents, we're talking about use of our park, docents could help lead people through that and talk about shoreline preservation and the investigation that we're doing and which each of those, along with the placards, similar to what we used to have at the Point. So this is also provides an opportunity for a speakers bureau that we would not have to pay our speakers. So we would have members of the academic community, not only from the College of Science and Engineering, come and talk about our shorelines, talk about our beach, talk about our blue crabs, talk about, you know, the oysters, et cetera, but other items of interest. So there is Catherine and I, and Bill and Terry, I think you were both there year before at the COG dinner where we had the economic development expert from UNCW. His focus is on regional economics of Brunswick County. And it was an awesome presentation if we could get, Dean Vetter has offered those services to us to talk about our economic region, which dovetails to our commercial efforts. It dovetails to, you know, the ability to answer questions that we may not be able to, but here's someone with a broader perspective. So if we did, you know, 6 speakers, UNCW's interest is our ability to broadcast those educational opportunities. Dean Vetter will be on the agenda in May is what we're working on, and have him to present to you the memorandum of understanding and the benefits to both UNCW and the town of Oak Island, and how we can work together to serve mutual interests. And it ultimately will bring resources to the town that we either at a lower cost than we're currently paying for the same resources, and or bring resources to the town that we don't yet have on projects that are in our strategic plan. So it would be inaccurate to call that the Rank to Reef. There's simply one vendor that would be part of the Maymore Park and the Veterans Park project for shoreline stabilization, which is within our plan. So that's the idea, and we'll have that draft MOU to you before the May meeting. But that's what that's. So the other thing is I'm also trying to work with Gene Toner, the mayor of the town of St. James, to see if we couldn't. They have shoreline preservation programs as well, using the graduate students and the full-time faculty. So there might be an opportunity to reduce that number by sharing those resources, but she would have to present that. So that's kind of what's baking for your future consideration.
On this town council, $175,000 legal service, is that the town attorney? Okay,
Hold on. Just,
Okay.
if I may amend your question.
okay.
Is that an all-inclusive number for legal services?
It is,
Just
it
simply
is,
for Lydia.
it's not inclusive of the police and fire when they tap into theirs, but they've got that covered in their budget.
Okay, but the question comes up, and it may come up publicly. What are you paying for, what's the total cost of legal services? I'd like to know what that number is. So it's 175 plus.
It's very minimal on the other side, but I will get you that
Well,
number.
and bond counsel.
That's a one-off that we haven't spent anything on yet, but that'll be baked into the savings.
Just trying to get the total number. 175 plus a minimal amount is what I'll say.
Okay, we'll
Okay.
find that.
All right?
The other of the $230,000 up there, the other item included in that, besides the attorney cost, is your auditor. That's always come out of this budget, which, as you know, we just approved after the RFP, a new audit firm. So we're anticipating a little bit higher costs. The bids actually came back better, but there are always additional services besides the CAFR, where we request they do the AFR. There's some other reportings they've assisted with W-2 submittals, so there's about $55,000 in there for the auditor.
So the auditor would be in contracted services, right?
Correct.
Yeah. The 60,000 for economic development,
Sorry, we're still in 10-410, so I'm not on, I think you're looking at 10-420.
yes, 10,420.
Are
We
we
haven't
done
got
with 10-410? Is there any other?
Any other questions? The only other large item in there is election expenses. That's not normally in there, so.
What is that?
Every other year when you have elections, that's our estimate for this year. If you look back at prior years,
2024, we spent 95.
we spent
Conduct the
9,000,
elections.
we spent 9,500 2 years ago, so 12 may be a little high, but we have no idea.
On council development, 3,900, what is that?
So, council development is for,
What line item would you like?
2102.
3,600.
that includes your, various training classes or conferences, but it also includes your NCBIWS.
And see byways.
But yeah, just different, like if the mayor goes to, a mayor's conference, or, I know this year alone, we've already spent $3,400, so.
COG dinner. Going to Raleigh to meet with our elected officials.
Special projects, 40,000. What is that?
That's the one we were
That was
just,
the one she was speaking
One
of.
above it then, other professional services, 55,000.
that's the auditor.
That's the auditor, yes.
The election expenses, should this council move forward on a referendum with respect to an item, is that an additional cost for that? That's baked in.
It's during the municipal election. It's just part of our cost for the election.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move quickly to the 420, which is administration. Mike, the next one, please, administration. Walk through that. And again, we're going to adjust these slides somewhere to find a way to categorize that better, but that inter-fund transfer is not normally there. That's the one-time $5 million for the sand project I was referring to earlier. So that does skew that budget quite a bit.
It does.
There we go. Again, skewed. Whoops. Was that the last one?
Of course, we, as
There you
far
are.
as payroll and everything, that was still the 3% that we've done across the board. As far as projections, and then,
Go through.
they really,
That's where I think, Mr. Bach, your question,
this 60,000 in economic
21.
development.
2110.
So, we have requested again for, to do the facade grant program, as far as for economic development, you know, where, the businesses could do a upgrade and apply for half of the, yeah. So that's what we did last year, and that's what is in there again for this year.
Last year, go ahead.
So Monday at the Land Use Plan Steering Committee meeting, we talked about this a little bit. would it be possible for us to get some stats on how that program has gone this year? How much money have we spent? Who's taken advantage of it? What have they done? I think, I personally feel like it's a valuable thing, but I want to make sure in this tight economic time that we're getting our value for the money.
Glad that. Good question.
110,000 appropriated, but only 15,000 spent.
There's still some bills coming in for that. I know they have to totally complete their thing, and it has to be approved and everything before she submits for their reimbursement. So, but I do know that there's several in the process right now, so that's
Several requests for the facade or just?
for their facade to come back. So we haven't actually paid it out yet, but they're working on getting those requests in.
If they're capital projects, they take some time, so they just haven't been paid yet.
Is part of the process, is she going back out after the work is done to kind of before and after to make sure we're getting the bang for the buck?
I'm almost positive she is. She's really, and like, she's been very detailed in what they have to do and what they can't submit for. Because I know she's actually denied a couple because they weren't within the realms of what we had originally scoped that out to be.
I'm like Terry, I'd like to see a breakdown where it went.
It'd be really cool if you did have before and after pictures. We could see what the visual improvement is, for the investment that we've made.
On drone expenditures, what if a drone breaks? We had zero.
Well,
budget.
yeah, sorry, that's in the fire budget now.
That's in what?
We moved that entire program over to the fire department last year.
Gotcha. Fire district fees on the next page, that's going to be explained to us by the fire department.
So these are the regular ongoing fees that we pay every year. This does not include Lee Price's discussion about changing from fees to tax. So, yeah,
It's what we
that's a
pay
good
the
point.
Forensic
This is
County.
everything the same as is, because you all haven't agreed to that change yet.
So Catherine, 420, 3,200. There's a minimal amount in here for advertising. I take it if we wanted to do a marketing campaign similar to what was being discussed earlier, we'd need a much more robust line item, right?
Right, this is more for legal fees
Yeah,
that where
just
the clerk
things
has to
in the paper.
advertise. We advertise for recruiting purposes.
Do we have any kind of a marketing line item?
We did in the golf fund, not in the general fund.
So what you were talking about, Liz, this kind of consolidated approach to marketing, and Mark was talking about branding, we don't have that line item, doesn't exist right now.
Right. Okay. That would be appropriate place if you'd like us to increase that for
I
that
don't think we're
purpose.
going very far in $1,800.
That is certainly not the intent of that line item. That's.
No, I know. I'm
Those
just
things.
pointing out that we had this soaring discussion, but we don't have any dollars to back it up.
So I remember we had a speaker a number of years ago, pre-you, Catherine, John and Mark and Bill, you can help me on this, who came to talk about, there's a portion, is it of the accommodations tax that goes to marketing?
The Tourism Development
Tourism
Authority,
Development.
TDA, gets 1% of your room occupancy tax. They have a considerable budget that they do marketing for beaches as well as the rest of the county.
What does Oak Island get? Where are our advertisements? What are we advertising for? How does Oak Island benefit from that 1%? And the woman who came to speak to us that did a presentation could not answer a single question, and I'm unaware of any information that came back to council based on their questions. If it existed, I don't know about it. But
we get out of
1%
that?
of our accommodations
No.
tax is a considerable amount of money. what are we advertising, and for whom? What are Oak Island's benefits from
Well,
that?
just to clarify, the accommodation tax is actually 6%.
Correct.
We get 5. So
Correct.
that one isn't, can you say it's coming out of our portion? It's really not, unless we assume that we should be getting the entire 6% of the accommodation tax. But from day one, they set it up to where that 1% comes right off the top of the
Correct.
6 for tourism. And then to your point, yes, we have asked on a couple of
So
occasions.
every town in the
what-
county that charges an accommodation tax?
Every rental.
That's right. It's countywide. He's
Every
correct.
rental.
So, let's look at this. The proof would be in the pudding. What are we getting for that 1%? I would like to have a half cent of that back, wouldn't you?
Well, or at least, like, if they can define how other communities are benefiting from their 1%,
That
then why
too.
can't they show us how we're benefiting from that 1%? Or can they not provide any details at all to anybody? All they're doing
Through
is,
the county commissioners?
it's through the state legislature, but it's collected by the county. Is right? It's collected by the
Yep,
county.
yep.
But the state legislatures establish the rate. And they have been asked in the past to increase the rate, and it's been denied. So they're holding firm at 6%,
Similar to the
1%.
Dozier tax, we're being taxed that and our hands are tied.
Well, that's a whole different
Yeah,
subject.
it is.
That is controlled by other legislation.
Well, the presentation was so lackluster, I didn't really think about it. And if I recall her argument, it was, well, I really can't give you any specifics, but you no doubt indirectly benefit from what we do. It's like some vague notion. But my point is, if we're serious about our own marketing campaign, we need to fund it, and get
Correct.
the expertise behind it. You're right, Liz, I don't know what they're doing, they couldn't explain it, other than to say, we're doing good things and you all benefit because of what we do, but they couldn't put their finger on any specifics.
It would be nice to see what those tasks actually are, right? So they've got 10 or 12 or 15 things that the county's doing to promote the county. And, you know, can they say Oak Island benefited to this point and Ocean Island, Holden, no, but can we, at least if we can get 10 or 15 bullets on what they are doing and how they're promoting tourism and how that could directly or indirectly benefit us.
I think their point of view that they presented is, we promote Brunswick County
In magazines.
in these publications or on these websites, right? We pop up in search engines and things like that. So then I think they just take credit for driving tourism for Brunswick County in general. So
Show
that
me.
would include, right, so that would include not just, you know, the beaches, but that would include, you know, I think the North Carolina battleship is in Brunswick County, right? Isn't it on the border or something like that? So there's other tourism attractions that are offered throughout Brunswick County, not just the beach communities, that they would probably take credit for under this umbrella of we drive tourism for Brunswick County, right? And, because I'm sure you can collect attendance statistics at some of these attractions, right? Especially the attractions that charge a fee to get in or whatever, right? So we don't charge a fee for someone to drive here and enjoy the beach because the state kind of owns the beach, right? So we can't tally, you know, the beach traffic on a per person level. The best we can do is Chief Morris has shown us, you know, that he can set up the trailer and we can get traffic counts over the bridges for like July 4th weekend, right? So that's, we can capture some data on our own, but yeah, there's no granular level of how that 1% is driving tourism specifically for Oak Island.
There's also software that municipalities and others use to calculate attendance simply by flying drones and capturing pictures and based on density per space. And we already have those segments that are used by police and fire, et cetera. So we would just have to take snapshots within those areas already defined to calculate attendance. It's technology or software that's been in place for a very long time, and it's industry standard at this point, but
I think it would be interesting to try to fine tune some of our assumptions. I think we just use a thumb in the air target and say, on any given, high volume weekend, there could be 50,000 people here. How accurate is that number? I mean, that's a guesstimate, right? We just threw a dart at a dartboard and landed on a number. If there would be the capability to kind of fine tune that and say, no, the real number is only 40,000 people on July 4th, or the real number is 70,000 people on July 4th, right? We use 50,000, I think, as a measuring stick even today. And I think we've been using that number for 4 years, at least that I'm aware of. So maybe it's time for that number to be updated.
If we're gonna upgrade our own advertising, why don't we go to that advertising group that takes our 1% and tell them what language we want them to use for our advertising?
well, my point is, that 1%, off the top of my head, I don't know how much money that is. I don't know if you can even have
I can do that.
yeah.
We get
So
$4
if we,
million in accommodation tax, that'd be.
if we don't feel like we're getting our money's worth, we ask for a reduction, I mean, I would like to have a 0.5% of that back, so that we can use that for targeted tourism and development, as opposed to general tourism and development. And if it's a legislature issue, I'm not shy for going to the state and asking for that as a consideration either.
I want to point out just a couple more in this budget. We do have built in an 18% estimated increase in our property and liability insurance. That's pretty significant. That's in there. We've kept the third year of our 5-year computer replacement. I think that's very important to make sure employees have the updated tools. We're working hard on the cybersecurity component, so Hooks is still in there as well. And one of the other initiatives I'm working on is an IT position. You won't see it as a outright request here. We're trying to be able to do that internally, but I think that's a huge need in this organization. And you'll hear from the police chief that he will echo that sentiment and probably say it even louder. We have got to make sure we are maintaining our tools to do our jobs properly, as well as having the efficiency, because some of us are quite behind in the technology, and the last couple of years have helped substantially get people off of computers that were very, very old, as well as the cybersecurity components we're working on. So more to come on that.
Contracted services, what's that? It's a pretty big number. What is that?
That is huge. One of them is Edmunds, which is our financial software for the whole town. We have finally gotten off having duplicative costs for financial systems. We've been carrying old systems for years and years. We canceled them. We migrated data over so that we could cancel the Harris system. Now we're in the process of canceling the Tyler system and making sure that we've migrated that data appropriately. So we will be down to one financial system.
Is the Edmunds system, is that a software as a service? It just has a monthly fee, or do we buy an annual license for that software now?
So I think it has both components in there. It's an annual cost for the service, but we did pay some upfront, and I don't know how much of that. I know we paid for the WIP intake of payments. We paid for some of the hardware, we paid for some of the licensing, we paid for implementation costs and training, but I think the rest is software as a service ongoing.
Last year, we appropriated $430, but only spent $160. Are we appropriating a higher amount because it's an unknown as to what the expenses are gonna be year to year?
Well, I do know that the Edmunds bill hadn't come in yet, so some of those bills still haven't transpired. We still have 3 months to finish that, so they bill us yearly instead of monthly.
If in fact we are able to onboard an IT resource, have we identified the services they would provide that are currently contracted, where we might be able to reduce the services that are under third-party contract. So when that comes up for renewal, we can maybe narrow the scope of work if we bring some of it in-house. And then my next question is, remind me again, do we lease our technology or are we buying technology?
We're buying the desktops, printers, and that is primarily what the need is for the desktop assistants. And we would recommend keeping Hooks as our private vendor to do the firewalls, servers, the major. This would be an in-house person for the desktop day-to-day computer assistance for employees.
Trouble.
Correct, but probably 50% or more really focused on the technology for the police. Because of all of their additional technology, their in-car cameras, their in-car computers, they need somebody on the ground all the time. And we do as well here. Our external provider has been very good, but I think we could use them for those major services, but not the day-to-day needs that we have. They would live here if we did that.
Because I agree, technology falls behind, which is why a lot of organizations have switched to leasing, even desktops, because you can put them on a 4-year schedule. So every 4 years, you're getting the next, latest and greatest technology, and you don't have to worry about, end of life for your own equipment that you own. It just happens magically through a lease agreement. So.
We do that through Hooks, so that's a great question. I'll ask them if they have that option.
Catherine, on page 3, do we have any outstanding reimbursements from FEMA due? Sorry,
From who?
FEMA.
Oh, yes.
Yes, we do.
I'm looking at 10-420, 4100, and 101 and 4102. It's on page 3, next to, down to by the bottom.
$4103?
4101 and 4102,
Oh.
Florence and ECAs.
But this is also in the expense section, so the money that's due from them would be in the revenue side.
Revenue side,
Yeah.
got it, thank you.
Yeah, those are just old lines that
Right.
we can't get rid of until the 5 years and cut them off, but sorry.
That's okay. It just prompted
But to
me
answer your
ask that
question, actually, we do still have outstanding money that we are waiting on from Florence and Matthew
Not ECAs.
from FEMA. No, we've primarily completed the required paperwork on ECAs and gotten most of that back already.
Okay, all
Just-
right.
I think there is a small
It just
amount.
goes in the general fund?
Correct, it runs straight to your fund balance if it's not reappropriated for something else. But we can't count on that yet because Matthew was how many years ago? 26, and we haven't seen it yet. So. But we are working with them. We just got an update recently, and it is on track. So assuming FEMA still exists, we will
Off
get
the
our
top of
money.
your head, how much is that? Just curious.
Close to $7 million, I believe.
And that just becomes a windfall.
It is.
Earned windfall, but a windfall.
Which I will use this opportunity to say that is why we have to keep a high fund balance. Because you see how long it takes to get paid back. So this town had to incur those costs that many years ago. And we've been waiting for the reimbursement ever since. So if we didn't have the healthy cash flow balance, we wouldn't have been able to do that.
And I worry if I know set-asides isn't a real budget thing, but if we were ever paid that money, I'd want to protect that because FEMA as an entity is not a certainty going forward. I've said that. We need to be cautious about the money that we have and invest it wisely, as I know you are.
I will certainly let you know as soon as that comes in and we'll celebrate together. Is there anything else in admin? Make sure we answer all your questions. large transfers we've talked about. One is to the golf course and the other is for the sand. Okay. What do we have next? What's next?
And the other one is the agencies, but we're gonna do that one today.
Yep, so finally on your agenda is boards and committees and outside agencies. I'll take a moment of privilege on that, but that should be behind all of your numbers. Yep, you're looking at the outside agency funding application. So I took a bit of a pause on this process instead of doing business as we've done it before, and certainly change it however you all would like. But my suggestion would be that we are very thoughtful in our approach to outside agency funding, in that we do a better job of evaluating what that request is for and how is it really helping the residents of Oak Island. Is it consistent with your strategic plan? Is it consistent with municipal services? They're all great agencies. We have so many wonderful agencies here. We have a lot of agencies that have never had the opportunity to participate. So being fair, being clear, and being intentional on the money that we put out for other agencies has been a passion of mine for a long time. And I helped develop the program with the city of Wilmington. And I think it's really important that we are on the same page. And so I don't want to misstep, but what we have prepared for you is a revised approach to this with a policy, with an application, with a clear process that is fair to everybody in the community. I want to thank.
Has the request already come in?
No, because I held that so that I could put this in front of you because it is a significant change. I didn't want to do that without running this by you first. And Rose has done a fantastic job of making this look much better than I ever could have imagined. But this is the new proposed application and policy so that they understand what we're looking for. Don't come and request if it's something that's not consistent with what the town of Oak Island's intent or values or strategic plan is. And if you do, so that they would understand if we had to say no. And we're in a budget year of scarce resources. That too needs to be looked at very clearly and cautiously. So that's the intent. We would like to open it up.
15, 20?
In the past, we have invited. So my preference would be not to invite just the few that we always invite, but to put this out openly and fairly and have people, if they think that they can help the town address the municipal services or the strategic plan and the goals that we're trying to achieve, then they can come forward and ask.
So in the past, the beach rescue has been one of the largest allocations, and those conversations haven't always gone well. Is there an opportunity for that funding to come under the fire department, since that's their report structure, rather than doing it as an allocation through outside agency funding?
I think that's a fair suggestion, question.
I don't know that it's fair to say the reporting structure comes under them, but it should,
It should,
in my
but it doesn't
opinion.
yet.
It should, yeah.
When he was talking the other day, ocean rescue and water rescue were two different entities.
Water rescue, that's what I could.
Yeah.
And so it seems duplicative to me. It is one emergency response system is what we're trying to promote here. And I don't have anything against water rescue, but I know, Mark, you've argued this point for years. I think if it is, if it's to operate as a single coordinated response, a layered response system, and that responsibility falls with fire services, then why do we have duplicative funding? Whether they want to maintain as a separate organization and be part of the town system, that's one thing. But we shouldn't be funding in two different directions,
Yeah,
in
I
my
mean,
opinion.
I think Chief Price can shed more details on this, but at a high level, one, Water Rescue is a nonprofit. Our fire department is a municipal department. Two, our municipal department doesn't recruit volunteers. Like Chief Price's main objective is not to build up a volunteer
Volunteer base.
staff. He would rather have 24/7 available services ready to go. The last two budget cycles, we have supported the Ocean Rescue Team, which is part of our fire department. And the benefit of that is they're on service, like they're part of the 24/7 operation of the fire department. And so when calls have come in now for the last two seasons, we are the first responders because we have
Correct.
Ocean Rescue paid personnel ready to go, where Water Rescue is all volunteers. A call comes in, they've got to rally to their muster point. They can't launch unless they have a minimum number of resources. So if 4 resources show up, I think they need 6 or 7, somewhere in
Even
that.
launch a boat.
Right, in order to launch a boat. So they will literally have to either wait there at their muster point, or they may be able to start traveling in anticipation of the volunteer numbers arriving on scene. But more importantly, since we are now primarily first to the scene, we take what's called incident command, right? So,
Yeah, ICS,
so
right.
Chief Price is now in command on pretty much every 911 call, right? I'm not gonna say 100%, we'll let him validate that, but I'm confident that we are first on the scene, which is critical, right? Because we have the jet ski, which could be launched with only 1 or 2 people. Like the jet ski goes out like immediately when Ocean Rescue's on the scene, right? And it can serve a lot of purpose. We added the drone service with the drop capabilities for rope and flotation devices, so that's a key element as well. So I agree with you. Why are we funding what is perceived to be 2 first responder type efforts? But I would also say to you, since they are 100% volunteer, they go out and do all kind of fundraising activities and all of that kind of stuff, which they're free to do. And we give them an amazing deal on the property. What is it, like a $1 lease every year? But we did change that lease to a year. You know, I think it used to be a long-term lease. Now we get to look at it year over year and decide, you know, do we support that service as a volunteer group? At one point, they wanted to expand and run calls for Holden and Sunset and the county. And so I'm like, well, we're subsidizing you a big amount of money and you're responding to calls somewhere else. And that's fine, that's your, you know, mission statement. But if a call comes in for Oak Island and you're in, you know, Brunswick County in the swamp, you don't have the resources to now run the call for Oak Island. So there's a lot of moving parts there and conversations. The one thing that I was going to suggest, looking through the documents, there were 2 items. One, should we consider capping, right? You know, like the Water Rescue is a great example. I think they started out asking for like 15, then it went to 20. The last number I saw was like 35, right? And so, you know, how much are we going to tolerate seeing increases, specifically maybe in their request, right? So maybe we start talking about some kind of cap, some kind of limit to how much one agency can receive. And then my only other point is, you know, we talk about the audit requirements, and it's a document that has to be submitted under the policy, but on the form where it says financial statements, there might want to be like a little asterisk there or parentheses that says, if your request exceeds, you know, just a reminder that their financial statement may need to be an audited financial statement if their request exceeds the $5,000 limit. It's in the policy, but it's just not on the application. So I'll end there.
Thank you, Catherine. I think it is a better document because it aligns with our strategic plan, as all things should, theoretically. The interface between an expanded fire capacity, municipal fire capacity for ocean rescue and water rescue is now an interesting kind of question, right? And I would argue that their claim is that they have mid-ocean equipment and facilities that we don't have. And so therefore, they're part of the triad, because by the time the Coast Guard gets here, you'll be dead, right? They're not coming. So we're coming immediately, but if it's further out, water rescue takes over. So they have a role to play. My problem with them, and this went on publicly for quite a while, tete-a-tete, is if they want $10,000 from us, they're going to give us an audit, period, end of story. And they went around and around last year. They couldn't get an audit, and they had somebody's friend came over and signed a piece of paper, and want an audit. And I think you're right, Mark, we should begin to think about not just water rescue, but how much any one nonprofit can get, right? Because this will make it more difficult because it can't just be a nonprofit, but there also probably should be a cap because we're not a charity. That's not why we're here. But I want an audit. I will not vote for anything that does not have an audit if it's over $5,000. So I hope they're not going to take that posture this year because it was really annoying.
I have to speak for their benefit, and they have been, since I've been here, they have been providing. I spoke with them, and I worked through that exact issue. So you're right, I agree, and they have been. I just want to
I think in
compliment
line
them for
with what
that.
Mark was saying, I think we just need to ask the fire chief, where does the town of Oak Island stand regarding the need for water rescue and the need for the people of Oak Island to subsidize water rescue? Fire chief, with all your capabilities, where do you think? It might be time for that question.
So I think water rescue, for a number of reasons, I think it is a valid question to ask, and even to John's point, Coast Guard can only come in, the ships that they have can only come in so far. We can only go out safely so far, and then there's that space in between. So there is a niche that water rescue does provide that allows some wiggle room for the extended amount of time that they might have to actually launch a boat. So there is a niche, and I think, in addition to an audit,
It's
and because
mid-ocean.
they're doing their own
I'm not opposed to them, I
fundraising.
just need to see the need.
Well, so the need, I think, is there, however it's defined, I think it should be stated. But the other that I'd like for us to consider is what would that, the property that we underwrite for them, what is that worth in the fair market value? Because if we're only charging them $1, then what are we already giving them?
A deal.
Well, so what is the need to give them more money
Yeah.
on top of what we're already giving them?
If they
And
have good fundraising efforts.
And we may choose to do that, right? But I just want it to be transparent, that it's added funding beyond what we're already giving you. And I don't think that's ever been a real discussion.
And I mean, not to their desire, but it is perhaps unfortunate for them that their location happens to be adjacent to something that we call a skate park. And we've had aspirations to do things like add merchandising and concession at that facility, again, to keep driving, revenue streams around merchandising and expanding our brand.
Parking.
So, parking, I mean, it's a tough spot because to your point, Liz, that land actually has far more value than $1 a year because of its location, right?
That's right, and that has taxpayer implications.
Sure does.
If we're giving something of value away
Right.
and then having to pay more for it somewhere else or in some other way, that's hurting our taxpayers.
Yep. I've suggested in the past that if Water Rescue wants to broaden their service area and help Brunswick County when they need it, or other beach communities when needed, then maybe their home base shouldn't be
Here,
just
but in the county.
dedicated to Oak Island. Maybe their home base needs to be off of a tributary in the county somewhere. And the county needs to step in and help out, facilitate that, so.
Well, and I think what we've learned is that they're no longer keeping things at this location, but rather staging them at other locations, maybe closer to where their members live or whatever. So then what happens to that space that we could use?
Yeah.
Well, I think we need to have the conversation, and there are obviously some questions that are going to be provocative. It's a historic organization. It was all volunteers. It was the only thing we had. They did and do save lives, right? So
Absolutely.
before we get dismissive about it, do they still fit? How do they fit? And at what cost to the taxpayer? If they were to dissolve, we'd have to absorb part of that capacity because we can't get out as far as they can get, and we're not as good in the marshlands as they are with their equipment. And maybe that's ultimately what happens. Maybe we don't rely on volunteers, we rely on professionals. And you, the chart's not up there. The driving cost of a fire department, clearly, right, even beyond the police. So a lot of, as Mark said, a lot of moving parts, a lot of levels to this, right? And, a lot will depend on how they present. They are responding, so they're going to have numbers, even if they're not the primary. They're rolling out on a lot of these.
Well, perhaps it's time it becomes a contracted service.
That's an issue too. That's what I'm alluding to at some point. Right now, they're augmenting most of the responses, I believe, but we'll see what numbers they present. It's all about the numbers.
Excellent job, Catherine.
1 o'clock?
This has been a fantastic budget presentation, and I look forward to,
We are.
About next week,
You want these back?
please.
all right, so I've got handouts and things. Should I take those with me, or will I get them back?
Whatever your pleasure is. We will add to your notebooks, hand it back out to you next time with the.
And when we get the final budget, where we have the slide presentations, the updated slide presentations, that's really helpful information. Where you've got the revenues and the expenses, et cetera.
When we present the budget at you have a public hearing on the
Yep,
budget?
yep.
At that point, we'll do some revised slides with the actual numbers. How's that?
Right.
It's under twice now.
Right.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Excellent, thank you, council, great meeting.